3 minutes after 10 is the time, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I have an embargoed press release in front of me from the Home Office. The embargo moment has passed. I'm not sharing anything that you're not supposed to know or probably haven't heard already, but there are 3 lines to it, and they seem to me to be strangely contradictory. Zombie-style knives and machetes will be outlawed under legislation laid tomorrow. Ban builds on some of the UK's existing knife laws, which are among the toughest in the world. And then there is talk of a surrender scheme which will be launched in the summer to remove these knives from our streets. We've been there before, haven't we? I've dealt with people from charities that specialise in sort of knife amnesties and put sort of skips, sealed skips, as it were, into which you can drop stuff, no questions asked. And every now and then they release photographs of some of the absolutely hideous weapons that have turned up in these silos. But they can't help themselves, can they? So they're announcing bans on knives while boasting about having some of the toughest knife laws in the world, which suggests to me that however tough these knife laws are, they're not working very well. To which I suppose you're perfectly entitled to respond by saying, well, they need to be even tougher then. But if they're already among the toughest in the world, unless, of course, the Tories are fibbing to you again, if they're already among the toughest in the world, then there is an argument to be made for saying that toughness perhaps isn't the answer. It's tempting, though, isn't it? It's tempting. Let's not pretend otherwise. The ease with which one can just allow the anger to infuse your veins at the thought of some young, and I shall use the word scrote at this point because I think it's mandatory for a certain type of radio presenter, the thought of some scrote threatening or, God forbid, harming you and yours, even taking lives with a knife, is one of those things about which it's very, very easy to feel incoherent fury. And indeed to start shouting from the rooftops, something must be done, to which cynical and self-serving politicians will respond, I suspect, by announcing another ban, despite the fact that we already have some of the toughest knife laws in the world. Which makes it interesting that on the same day that this news release comes out, the Labour Party has unveiled its plans for the future, and they are markedly different. They will not, I don't think, delight people who are keen to have incoherent rage flooding through their veins, but they may actually address problems that have gone unaddressed for, 14 years, really, isn't it? Since David Cameron became Prime Minister. And the fundamental foundation of the plan is an acknowledgement that cuts to youth services have contributed to a rise in knife crime. And if you want to stop knife crime, or if you want to reduce knife crime, you have to do one of 2 things, don't you? You either have to make the people carrying knives and minded to or likely to commit knife crime stop doing so, right? The second bit is less obvious, actually, and I think it probably undermines some of the government's posturing on this issue, because the second thing you could do in order to hugely reduce the amount of knife crime is stop the next generation of young people picking up a knife in the first place. That, to me, is probably a higher priority. I don't want to introduce a hierarchy here necessarily, but it seems to me that if you're serious about stopping or reducing knife crime, then the absolute top priority needs to be preventing young people or dissuading young people from carrying knives in the first place. If you're not carrying a knife, you can't commit a knife crime. I mean, you can give me a semantic wriggle if you want and say, well, you can actually. Someone could come for you with a knife, drop it, you pick it up and stab them, and therefore you've committed a knife crime, but you weren't actually carrying a knife yourself. But you're being silly. Or at the very least, you're being unnecessarily and unduly pedantic. So we'll park that thought, having acknowledged it, for the sake of semantics. But that seems to me to be at the root of what the Labour Party is proposing, albeit that they also decry research the party has done itself, showing that half of all knife possession cases led to a no further action outcome. So the idea of further criminalising or further responding to the mere possession of a knife, and I use the word mere advisedly, you know I do, the mere possession of a knife is currently not. It doesn't set enough wheels turning. Now, some people will think that they should be sent to jail. Everybody found with a knife should be sent to jail. Well, I've got some rather bad news for you. That the criminal justice system at the moment is not fit for purpose. Again, 14 years of Tory rule, cuts to funding, absolute absence of political appetite have seen our courts grind almost to a halt. Our prisons, already overcrowded, have got waiting lists even longer than the housing list, pound for pound. So that is just not a suggestion that works without immense public spending of the kind that the Tories would never contemplate and Labour would not prioritise. They would be keener to stop people becoming criminals as opposed to this naive and foolish and disproven belief that we need to be tougher, we need to be stricter. And I'm not what's the word I want? I'm not mocking people who feel like that. I get it completely. It is a natural, it's an almost primal response to fear and to danger. It's almost fight or flight, isn't it? But it doesn't work. We've already got some of the toughest knife laws in the world, but knife crime is still rising, or at least it's still a huge problem. Coming down in some cities, but it's a national issue. So Labour have found £100 million from the money it will raise taxing private schools, adding VAT to school fees. And they will introduce a network of hubs for young people. They'll have youth workers in A&E units. They'll have custody centres and communities where mentors will work with young people and also take up positions in pupil referral units. So the sanctions for knife possession that they're looking at include non-criminal requirements that offenders would have to complete. At the moment, you can essentially write a letter of apology and that's it. The involvement is over. But they're looking at curfews, they're looking at tagging, and they're looking at behavioural contracts. The difference between these two proposals seems to me to be that one is actually designed, and it may not work, but one is designed very much with the aim and intention of addressing the problem, while the other is aimed very much at addressing people who profess to be concerned about the problem. I could be wrong. I'm aware of my own biases. I think with the Conservative Party in its current state, it's impossible not to feel a bias towards any potential opposition. I can insulate myself, if you listen to the programme on a regular basis, from any accusations of footballification by reminding you how unimpressed I was by the last leader of the Labour Party. So it's not a tribal issue for me, but there are biases involved when you look at the damage that 14 years of Tory rule has done to this country. I think you have to be quite mad not to be, quotes, biased, end quotes, against them. Even now, they're indulging in another round of civil war and internecine squabbling when the country crumbles. So it seems to me that banning zombie-style knives and machetes is politics by posture. We have done this. I'm not a young person and I have never carried a knife. But if I was banned from carrying that kind of knife and I was determined to carry a knife, I would carry a different kind of knife. There's not a kitchen in the country that doesn't contain a lethal weapon. So I don't know. And obviously some weapons are more lethal than others. So minimising the amount of damage that can be done by the weapon that a kid is carrying is obviously worthwhile on one level, but is it actually policy or is it mere posture? Idris Elba has waded into this arena lately, and he is very much of the view that, deterrent is more important, if you like, than cure. Some people carry knives out of fear. And he very much leads the line on making people not pick them up in the first place. This is responding to a woman who quite understandably called for compulsory prison sentences after her daughter was killed in Nottingham last year. So that would be a mandatory prison term simply for carrying a knife. And those are the facts, with a little bit of feeling thrown in for good measure, in that the Labour Party plan seems to me to be designed to address the problem, and the Conservative Party plan seems to me to be designed to allow them to say that they've done something. So how are we going to do this today? Well, I think the most illuminating moment I've ever had on the radio in all the conversations that we've had over the years about knife crime was actually the one that Idris Elba alludes to. It makes me feel stupid in retrospect that the very simple question of why you started carrying a knife in the first place came back fairly quickly to because I was frightened of being stabbed. And I know that sounds incredibly naive to people closer to this sort of conduct or criminality than I have ever been. But my goodness me, the clouds parted that day. I don't know if you were listening. We're talking a long, long time ago. Why did, because you have this image of everybody being feral and horrible and waiting to stab you or steal an old lady's handbag. Why did you start carrying a knife? Answer, because I was frightened of being stabbed. There was a kid at school that said he was going to stab me, so I started carrying a knife. If he takes his knife out, I'll take my knife out. It probably increases the chances of injury being done, but you'd have to be pretty stupid not to see the rationale behind that original decision. So the Labour Party's plan is to stop them picking up the knife in the first place, as opposed to promising to be even stricter or banning certain knives, certain types of knives, and promising to be even stricter. So I think what I want you to tell me, knowing more about this world than I do, and listen, again, with great love and respect, don't give me a ring to tell me about what you did when you were a teddy boy in the 1950s, all right? It took me a while of doing this job to realise how important it is to zone in on people who actually know what they're talking about. Stop and search is another wonderful example. Elderly white men who've never had a negative encounter with the police in their lives have very, very strong opinions about what should happen to young black men who are completely innocent but should be treated as if they're not until they can actually prove it. A complete subversion of one of the most fundamental platforms of UK law, but people, when they don't think it's going to affect them, are quite happy to play fast and loose with other people's rights and dignities. Everybody likes the police until they're the ones being policed. A very wise woman said to me during the COVID crisis, because at that point a lot of elderly white men suddenly felt that the police were being far too heavy-handed by telling them where they could and couldn't go for a walk during lockdown. Let alone chucking them over the bonnet of a Black Maria and making them empty their pockets 3 times a week. But I digress. What would work? What would work? So I've got 2 questions for you. 0345 6060973. One is, why did you stop carrying a knife? Okay? Why did you stop carrying a knife? Not why did you, well, I might ask that as well, but why did you stop carrying a knife? What happened? 0345 6060973. I know it won't be an easy story to tell or an easy story to share, but I think it's a really important one. What made you stop? What made you leave it at home? What made you chuck it away? Throw it in a canal? I don't know. Put it back in your mum's knife block? What made you stop? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. And then the other question I want you to answer is I want you to explain how it works, okay? Because let me just go to my inbox. I don't even need to check, to be honest. There'll be someone who's going down that, lefty, you need to... Here you go, Aid's in Telford. Thank you, Aid. James, typical lefty, it's time to crack down now. The softly soft approach has failed. Labour's policy on knife crime will not work. London has spent 500 million on education on knife crime over the past 4 years. The Conservative wants to get tough and Labour want to talk about it as usual. So how do you explain to someone like Aid why intervention before the knife is picked up works? Because it can become a bit of a cliche, can't it? You know, and you can see why some people who either don't like thinking much about stuff or don't really care about outcomes but revel in the pungency of their own opinions respond to some of the rhetoric by going, youth clubs, yeah, great. But obviously all of the professionals working in the sector will tell you that cuts to youth services hugely increase the likelihood of criminality among youths, up to and including knife crime. So why does it work? I went to boarding school. I genuinely have no idea what it would be like to be 15 years old and out. It's almost embarrassing how ignorant I am or how innocent I am on this issue. I mean, why would it work? When Labour talk about youth hubs and they talk about youth workers and they talk about spending money on providing alternatives. Young Futures is the name of their program, to identify young people most at risk of knife crime and then prevent them from ever picking up a knife in the first place. How does that work? I mean, if it happened to you, if you were knocking about with a crew that did carry knives, or some of your friends did carry knives, what was it that sent you down the other path? So I've got 2 questions for you today. The first is, why did you stop carrying a knife? 0345 6060973. And the second is, for a completely different constituency of people, why didn't you start? Now, to be relevant in the second question, you can't be like me. You have to be from a background or a postcode where knife crime or carrying a knife was commonplace. You need to have peers and or friends who carried or carry knives, okay? This is perhaps the most important question in this field. Why didn't you start carrying a knife? Why didn't you? 0345 6060973. Some of the answers will be quite simple, if you like. For example, this one. I'll be honest, James, I never carried a knife because when I was in school, at the age of about 6 or 7, they showed us a public information film of how carrying a knife is bad. In the video, the boy carrying the knife dropped it and got stabbed with his own knife. I just never forgot that video. I know there were probably kids who took no notice of it, but that is why I never did it. And then, again, I don't think this is Idiot's Corner, but you haven't really been paying attention to what we're talking about. Rubbish, that's an excuse to have a knife. I'm scared of being stabbed and always have been. I have never carried a knife. Yes, well, I've never had smallpox, but I know it existed, okay? Just because you didn't start carrying a knife because you were frightened of being stabbed doesn't mean that everybody who did start carrying a knife because they wanted to defend themselves in the event of someone pulling a knife on them is somehow lying or doesn't exist. Actually, no, that is Idiot's Corner. Sorry, I've spent 20 minutes explaining this. If you're still lagging behind, I'm afraid you'll have to see me after class. So 2 questions for you. Number 1, why did you stop? Number 2, why didn't you start? 0345 6060973. 24 minutes after 10. So working on the very revolutionary idea that the best people to listen to are people who know what they're talking about, I want to know why you stopped carrying a knife, or why you, despite the fact that it was relatively commonplace or normal behaviour in your peer group, why you never started. Wilson is in Croydon. Wilson, what can you tell us?
I guess the reason I stopped was going to jail. Not so much the jail itself, but the impact it had on my family. I remember when I got sent down, my mum actually sobbed, and I've never heard her cry like that in my life.
Gosh.
And when I came out, I didn't want to put her through that.
So family then, actually, as much as jail in a way, because, of course, we're all familiar with stories of people going in and coming out more criminalised than they were before. So what, you'd never felt shame before about what you were doing?
I guess not really. You know, when you're sort of in that bubble, as it were, you know, the normal rules of quote unquote regular society don't necessarily apply. The rules of your peer group and the people around you seem to me more important, and you forget that there's a wider society that doesn't necessarily agree with the way you're living. When did you start? Can you remember when you first left home with a knife in your pocket? Probably when I was 15. And what would you have said at the time if I'd said why? Why have you got that? What's it for? What are you doing? What are you thinking about? It's funny because when you alluded to that, it's literally the same. Someone pulled a knife on me. They tried to rob me, and I just couldn't do nothing. Luckily someone intervened, but at that moment I just felt like, well, I've just got nothing to defend myself with, and I don't know if a knife is really adequate defense. It's not like we're going to have sword fights out here, but at the time I thought, well, at least if I pull mine back, they're going to think twice, and that was literally it. And did it? I mean, did it ever come to that? I mean, it actually did. I mean, I had and I literally pulled it out, and then all of a sudden, and luckily no one ended up getting stabbed, and we sort of both back down. Right. If I didn't, maybe you would have. I mean, it's hard to fault the logic of that position, isn't it? In the sense that, someone pulled a knife on you and you thought, well, if that's going to happen again, I mean,
I'm going to have something to do in return. I'm going to have some form of retaliation. Can I ask what you went to prison for?
Stabbing someone.
So you did use it then subsequently? I mean, were they very badly hurt?
Fairly badly.
Okay.
Not life-threatening, but badly.
And bad enough to get a custodial sentence?
Yeah.
When you were inside, did they do anything to encourage you to change your ways, or was it just the thought of, when I get out, I'm gonna become someone that my mum is not ashamed of, or is not?
Yeah, I mean, they have education classes and they have different things, because it's a young offenders institution. So I'm not too sure what adult prisons have, but they had a few things, but mainly it was my family. Just I didn't want to, and lots of time. I see all my friends start doing things, moving on, and I'm just stuck behind bars, and I just, that wasn't for me.
And when you got out, Wilson, how hard was it to tread a different path?
For me, it was relatively easy. I got, I didn't come from necessarily a bad home, whatever that means, but I had a good family structure, I had a good family support, my mum, my sisters, my brother. So, they worked really hard. My mum was working with colleges to get me an education before I even came out. So,
wow.
I had that, but a lot of my peers didn't, and the ones that kept going in and out around that period didn't have that, and they didn't have that support or anyone to sort of back their corner and show them a different path, or at least help them walk it.
Does your mum know how grateful you are?
My mum's passed,
I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, but I'm pretty sure she does.
and she saw you turn things around before you lost
them. Yeah, she definitely did. I got 3 kids. She got to see all of them, and so yeah.
It's crazy. Thank you. That helps. I mean, it's good and bad, isn't it, in a way? Because as you acknowledge yourself, plenty of people who didn't have the family support, if you'd been in their shoes, you probably wouldn't be where you are today.
Yeah, and I think, while prison may have an effect, I think ultimately the narrative around carrying a knife and the narrative around prospects for young people especially has to sort of be strong and change to counter the narrative that is often pushed on young people, that actually, it's okay to carry a knife. Violence is cool, because there is that narrative, and a lot of them absorb that, and
break that cycle, and you reduce the number of people who will end up in the situation that you ended up in. Thank you, Wilson. It's coming up to 10:29. That's an answer to the first question. Why did you stop? And it speaks directly to what the Labour Party has announced today. Not sure that a ban on a certain type of knife would have made much difference to that story at all, but managing somehow to get yourself on a different track, to get yourself on a different path, whether it takes an event as essentially violent as imprisonment and incarceration, the sound, the sight of your mother sobbing in a court as you're taken away and sent down. For a lot of people, that won't be enough to push them onto new tracks. For Wilson, it was. But if you can get people onto the new tracks at the beginning, they never go onto the bad tracks. They get onto the good tracks from the start, which is what this programme from the Labour Party seems to me to be about. Then it seems pretty logical that the reduction in the kind of crimes that Wilson committed would happen organically. It would happen inevitably, like night following day. I could be wrong. 0345 60973 is the number that you need. 2 questions. Number 1, why did you stop? Number 2, why didn't you start? Thomas Watts is here now with your headlines. 10:33 is the time. It is a little odd. Listen, for the avoidance of doubt, there's no reason why so-called zombie knives should be for sale anywhere in the country. You might need a certain type of tool to chop. I think I've got a machete at home, if that's the technical term. No, I've got like a serrated thing that I use to prune trees. It's not a bread knife, Keith. No, it's definitely a gardening tool. I bought it in a garden centre. But some of the knives that you see in the coverage of these stories are patently. There's no case for being able to sell them. There's no defence. The problem, of course, is that box cutters or Stanley knives are weapons of choice, particularly for football hooligans back in the day. So I don't know how far a ban on zombie knives goes. I don't think it goes very far, but that's not a reason to oppose it. No one suggested for a minute that it's not worth doing. It just feels a bit like you're nibbling at the edges of a problem. Whereas the Labour proposals, which would direct £100 million at youth hubs for young people, put youth workers in A&E units, custody centres and communities. So you're both tackling the young people who've started carrying and, I think even more crucially, tackling the young people who might start carrying. So why did you stop? And for a different caller entirely, or not entirely, for someone from an identical background or peer group, why didn't you start when your friends did? Harry is in Bristol. Harry, what would you like to say?
Hi. So my friend was actually killed by a zombie knife. So I have quite a lot to say. I would like to say that I think, starting with youth clubs, stuff like that is really, really important. You wouldn't understand how helpful that is for young boys.
Tell me why.
Well, I see a lot of boys now. There's not much to do. Youth clubs aren't open, so they're going around on the streets. They don't really. There's not much structure there. So, yeah. Also, to my friend who went into prison for, actually, he stabbed the person who my friend who died by a zombie knife.
So you were friends with both of them?
Yeah. So my best friend, who was his cousin, pretty much,
right,
stabbed the man who killed him. So he went to prison for a year and a half in young offenders. He came out and he's changed. He doesn't carry a knife now. He didn't. It was actually the first day he ever carried a knife. He did that the day it happened.
Have you ever carried one?
No, I haven't. The reason why that is because of my family structure. I have a mum and a dad. I come from, even though I'm in a middle class family.
Yeah.
I live away from quite poor places with my friends who don't have the family structure I have.
Right.
That's probably the main reason why I don't carry, is because I can come back to my house.
But you're not fearful. I mean, so you're knocking about with people who do carry knives and indeed have used them.
Yeah.
You just there's a gear that you've never moved into. You've never thought to yourself, I am at risk, therefore I need to protect myself. Why?
Yeah,
and that's because of home. You think that's because you can go home and because you're still. I mean, it doesn't matter what your home life is like. If someone pulls a knife on you, you are as vulnerable as somebody who's not got a secure home life.
Of course. But it's also the fact that I'm not known by these people who might want to stab people from my area.
Yeah, I've got it. So that's gangs then, essentially.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So even though my friend, he's got out of prison, he doesn't carry now. He's at risk still of getting stabbed
because he has a name, as it were. He is someone who has a name on his back.
He stabbed someone who is affiliated in that area, so it makes it hard for him.
What do you say, Harry, to someone who thinks, "Oh, do me a favour, youth clubs. These are hardened criminals we're talking about. The sooner they're all locked up and the keys are thrown away, the better." How do you persuade someone like the caller I had, the texter I had? I don't know if you were here at the start, from Telford, banging on about softly and lefty this and lefty that. I can see where someone like that can get their brains boiled, but I think it would be helpful for you to explain what difference youth centres, youth hubs, call them what you will, would make to the kind of young people that you're talking about.
I mean, I had friends who actually, because of the youth clubs in my area, wasn't going around and carrying knives. You'd really be surprised at how important these youth clubs are. Youth things in general will just really help people who they want things to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty simple statement. They want things to do. It's that straightforward. And if there's nothing to do, because I think sometimes people like me who've never had any real experience of this at all, we imagine that the issue is a lot more complicated, a lot deeper, as if there is some sort of almost a different language that we don't understand. But what you are talking about is a bunch of teenage boys who have nothing to do every night, wandering around and falling out with each other and fighting in a way that has evolved to include knives.
Exactly.
And if they were going to the same places, or if they had places to go, A, they wouldn't be wandering around, and B, they'd probably know each other a bit better.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really bad cycle of if someone who wants to stab you is carrying a knife, how do you counter that? Is by carrying a bigger knife.
There's a logic to that, although it's a logic that you have not fallen prey to.
No, I haven't, and I wouldn't want to, and I've tried my best to really stay out of it. But I would say that if I didn't have the structure that I do,
home.
You would have.
It's interesting because you both mentioning family. Wilson as well, who's had the opposite experience and who stabbed someone. We mustn't make light of that, and went to youth offenders as a consequence. But the mother, knowing what he'd done and being so broken by it, seem to be enough to give him a nudge in that direction. I sense, talking to Harry, that it's not something you would, if your parents found out you were doing it, then you that's one of the reasons why you wouldn't do it, that sense of letting down your parents, perhaps. John's in St Albans. John, what would you like to say?
Well, I just think Sadiq Khan's policy, and even the Labour policy, I mean, I think it's better than nothing, but I don't see it working.
What is Sadiq Khan's policy? What do you mean?
So his policy to tackle knife crime at the moment is education upon being in a hospital or being arrested. That's too late. You've either been stabbed or you've been caught carrying a knife.
Exactly that.
You need to solve the issue at the root, and by that is going into schools, educating people at kind of the Gen Alpha level now, to make sure the new generation coming through never pick up a knife. I've had a knife pulled out on me twice. Once, actually, incidentally, was outside the youth club that's been shut down near me. Right. Which is kind of, you couldn't make it up, really.
What happened in the youth club? Sorry to ask you a silly question, but what sort of things went on in there when it was open?
So it was community engagement activities with other young people, like art projects, things like that. So there was lovely murals around. It was people potentially from disadvantaged backgrounds, given opportunities to help out and volunteer and aid the community, that kind of stuff. Okay, so just again, somewhere to go, somewhere to be is what you're describing, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I mean... So tell me more about what happened to you and why these two experiences were not enough. I presume, from the way that you're speaking, they were not enough to prompt you to fight fire with fire, as it were. Yeah, I come from... I mean, my parents would never forgive me if I ever walked out of the house with a knife, to be perfectly honest with you. But there was one experience where my brother got pushed off his bike and I went over to confront the people, and all of a sudden there's a knife, which we managed to defuse the situation. Everyone walked away okay. And the second time I was doing some filming on the High Street in Camden. Right. And I run a small marketing agency, and some guy tried to walk in front of the camera. So one of the runners and I said, "Oh, sorry, do you mind just walking behind the camera, mate?" Yeah. And he pulled up his shirt to show a massive machete. To which I thought, right, you can ruin the shot, mate. Walk on through. We'll film it later. Yeah. Yes. So I've been not actively threatened yourself, as it were, as in robbery or something like that. But it just doesn't. It sounds like it's not part of your your behavioural vocabulary. Whatever happened to you, you would not go there. You wouldn't get up the next day and think, I'm leaving the house with a knife today. No, that's never gone through my brain. I mean, even I think even the policy on stop and search and putting more police officers in disadvantaged areas where knife crime is high. Yes. I think that just perpetuates the problem. Because it becomes because the problem is people who live in disadvantaged areas. Then with all this police presence, I just don't think it helps. I mean, I'm a massive advocate for narcotics reform. Yes. You take the criminality out of drug dealing, and you take probably, hopefully, possibly, you take a lot of the side effects out of the picture as well. You're not going to stab someone over turf if there's no turf to be had. Thank you, John. 10:43 is the time. Dean's in Slough. Dean, what would you like to say? Why did are you here to tell me why you stopped or why you never started?
Why I stopped. Thanks, James. Great show, by the way. Basically, I was born and raised South London, Peckham to be precise and stuff. Yes. I used to go to school. My second secondary school was in Peckham. Went to school one day, got into a bit of an argument, and somebody wanted to stab me. So I had to run into the estate across the road from my school, which happened to be North Peckham Estate, where Damilola, yes, Taylor. You know, yes, yeah. Like I hid in the stairwells in there. These guys went to the bottom of the stairwells. I went to the top floor in the stairwell, and they went to the bottom. And these two guys, a couple of years older than me, because I was only 15, they're up there shouting, "Oh, we know you're up there. We know you're up there." How scared? I mean, that's terrifying, right? James, man, I was scared. Yeah. I was scared. Like, I was fearing for my life, James. Like, you know, it's serious out there on the estates. It's what I was saying to your producer. Like, I was very, very scared, but I stayed quiet and they went away. So give it a couple of minutes. Obviously, I've got to get back down, get out off the North Peckham Estate and run across the road back into school. Yes. They saw me when I was running across the road. They saw me and they were like, "Oh, hey, come here!" And for some strange reason, James, I insulted them. Yeah, like I don't know why. If it was fear, adrenaline, or what. I'm running across the road to my school, and I'll never forget it to this day. I was like, "Suck your mother," basically. I don't know. No, that's all right. I'm allowed to say that. I'm not. You've said it. Sure. You've said it now, Dean. We'll find out in a minute, won't we? Whether you were allowed to. My bad. Apologies. That's all right. Apologies. No. But Yeah, so I've done that. So I thought I never want to be in that position again. So I started carrying knives.
Well, like the next day, effectively.
Next day, I started carrying knives. Like I was carrying knives next day. I chilled out with gangs. There's 14K. Like there was triads. Like I stopped chilling out with people of my own ethnicity, like black, brown, whatever they want to call themselves. I started chilling out with Chinese and Vietnamese people. They were chopping people left, right, and centre. It was absolutely mayhem in the mid to late 90s. However, I ended up in the Slough area. My father came get me because my mum had a nervous breakdown or two.
Okay.
Ended up in yes, is what it is, James. We just rock and roll with the punches. We have to. But
so you moved. I mean, just a geographical relocation, and that changed the circles you were mixing in.
It's slightly, because obviously there's this, Great Western line straight down to straight into Peckham again.
Yes.
But I was out of it and I was seeing different. There was more opportunities, work opportunities, better opportunities available in Slough, even though there was the discrimination. However, I stopped carrying knives. Like I ended up in being around nice people who used to drive me about rather than take a bus around London and stuff like that. I'd chill out with people and they'd take me out and about. My father and my uncle would take me about. I ended up getting a couple of jobs which would take me out of the Slough area.
And so when did you stop? Do you remember the day where you thought, I'm not taking that out today, or not? Was that...
Probably about 2001 when I was actually going to cause harm to somebody and I realised I'd get locked up for life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't worth it. Like there was a caller before, 2 calls before,
yes,
saying his mum was sobbing. My mum had a nervous breakdown. I ended up in YOI. My mum had a nervous breakdown. My little brothers went into foster care. What else happened? Oh, there was something to do with Iraq going on, 1998 or something like that. There was a lot going on. So by 2001, I was looking around and I was seeing the difference. I was seeing opportunities available if you can.
It's doors, isn't it? It's doors, Dean. It's the more doors you've got. You might not go through all of them, but the more doors you've got, the better chance you have of not going through the one that leads to jail or death or some other disaster, some other tragedy. To talk briefly about having nothing to do, because when you talk about chilling out with people, you're essentially describing a life where your options for socialising are profoundly limited.
Yes, very. Well, like you said, youth clubs. The thing is, people mention youth clubs and stuff.
Yeah.
You've got the goodies, we call them for now, in the in the clubs. But then outside the club, or 1 or 2 guys in there, they're already for war and they're already calling their mates to come rob everybody.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean, James? It wasn't. That's why the club's closed in the first place.
So that's interesting. So there can be a naivety about simply suggesting, or even a sort of panacea. Oh, we need more youth clubs. They need that, which is probably why the Labour Party isn't using that language. And it's pretty clear on having youth workers in place, not just in these so-called hubs, but in custody centres, in A&E units. If you're serious about fixing problems like this, then you need to listen to people who've been through it, like Dean, every caller that we've had so far, and you need to address it at every generational level. The problem will be fixed fastest by making sure that the next generation don't become part of the problem. I think that's pretty clear, and I don't think that a ban on a certain type of weapon moves the needle much in the desired direction. Dean, thank you. 10:48 is the time. So when did you stop? Do you remember the day where you thought, I'm not taking that out today, or not? Was that
probably about 2001 when I was actually going to cause harm to somebody and I realised I'd get locked up for life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't worth it. Like there was a caller before, 2 calls before,
yes,
saying his mum was sobbing. My mum had a nervous breakdown. I ended up in YOI. My mum had a nervous breakdown. My little brothers went into foster care. What else happened? Oh, there was something to do with Iraq going on, 1998 or something like that. There was a lot going on. So by 2001, I was looking around and I was seeing the difference. I was seeing opportunities available if you can.
It's doors, isn't it? It's doors, Dean. It's the more doors you've got. You might not go through all of them, but the more doors you've got, the better chance you have of not going through the one that leads to jail or death or some other disaster, some other tragedy. To talk briefly about having nothing to do, because when you talk about chilling out with people, you're essentially describing a life where your options for socialising are profoundly limited.
Yes, very. Well, like you said, youth clubs. The thing is, people mention youth clubs and stuff.
Yeah.
you've got the goodies, we call them for now, in the in the club. But then outside the club, or one or two guys in there, they're all ready for war, and they're already calling their mates to come rob everybody.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean, James? Like, it wasn't. That's why the club's closed in the first place.
So that's interesting. So there can be a naivety about simply suggesting, or even a sort of panacea. Oh, we need more youth clubs. They need that, which is probably why the Labour Party isn't using that language, and it's pretty clear on having youth workers in place, not just in these so-called hubs, but in custody centres, in A&E units. If you're serious about fixing problems like this, then you need to listen to people who've been through it, like Dean, every caller that we've had so far, and you need to address it at every generational level. The problem will be fixed fastest by making sure that the next generation don't become part of the problem. I think that's pretty clear, and I don't think that a ban on a certain type of weapon moves the needle much in the desired direction. Dean, thank you. 10:48 is the time.
Tonight with Andrew Marr from 6 p.m. only on LBC.
The Joseph Rowntree Foundation produced its 2024 UK Poverty Report. In the last year, more than 1 in 5 people were living in poverty, including 8 million working-age adults and 4 million children. I hope you agree that this is deeply shameful.
Andrew Marr.
It's not just the material deprivation you experience, it's often the sense of being isolated from society that people will experience.
Tonight with Andrew Marr from 6 p.m. Listen on your radio and Global Player, the official LBC app.
Hello. I'm currently out of office. An article I read recently said we're more relaxed and more productive after a good break. So, I've gone to Barbados for a month for science. Yours, Toby.
Take your holiday as seriously as British Airways Holidays take your holiday. Atoll protected.
Meet the Nissan range that makes life pop. Pop with colour. Pop with excitement. All available to test drive at an event like no other. The Nissan Pop-Up event runs from the 16th to the 31st of January. And you could get an extra £1,000 deposit contribution at 5.99% APR representative towards a new Nissan Qashqai, Duke or X-Trail. Search Nissan Pop-Up and pop in for a test drive today. Offer valid until 31st of January 2024. Personal contract purchase. Nissan Financial Services. Participating dealers only. T's and C's apply. Find out more at nissan.co.uk.
I wonder if I can get a plasma cutter for the warehouse.
I wonder if I can do up the function room just in time for the holidays.
iWalker means business loans without the wondering. Because at iWalker, we'll give you a decision when you need it.
I wonder if I can afford a director of Take Everything Off My Plate.
See how we can help your business at iWalker.co.uk. That's iwoca.co.uk. iWalker. Hassle-free loans for small businesses.
Buy part of a new wind farm or solar park and generate your own low-cost, greener energy with Ripple. Joining Ripple could cut your energy bills by hundreds of pounds a year for decades, without the hassle of paying to have solar panels installed onto your home or business. Your own energy to wherever you live, even if you move home. That's real climate action to be proud of. Welcome to Ripple. Ripple Energy.
You've arrived, your dream holiday. You got there for less thanks to comparing flight prices on Kayak. An idyllic local restaurant nestled in the cliffs. A peaceful pool with your own private sunbed. This is the life. All you have to do is actually book it. Don't holidays, use Kayak to compare flight prices from hundreds of travel sites and bag a great deal. Search Kayak and go see for yourself.
The British Airways original sale has just landed, with hundreds of business class flights, like a New York return for $1,799. Now's your chance to switch off before takeoff in one of our lounges, or stretch out in a seat that converts into a fully flat bed. Book your British Airways flights and holidays at ba.com/sale. Sale ends January 30th. Limited availability. Terms and conditions apply.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10:52 is the time. Here's a first for Chris in Oxford. Dear James, please may I refer myself to Idiot's Corner. Last year, I texted Sheila Fogarty suggesting that the knife problem could not be solved with games of ping-pong in youth clubs. But your item today has changed my thinking. The situation can be changed, but it will take a government that gives a flying fig about disadvantaged youth. And that, I think, is the difference between policy making designed to fix problems, to try to fix problems. There are never any guarantees. And policy making designed to curry headlines and allow politicians to claim that they have done something. So someone shouts, something must be done. And Tories want to be able to shout back, something has been done. And no one stops to wonder whether what has been done is going to make the blindest bit of difference to the thing that needed to be addressed. Speaking of things that need to be addressed, the childcare questions that popped up yesterday, it was during PMQs, I think, and the sense that things were rather more chaotic than perhaps most of us had appreciated. That story has moved on this morning, and Natasha Clark has the details.
Morning, James. Yes, as we were speaking about at Prime Minister's Questions, he really was grilled on the future of this childcare expansion. You'll remember, cast your minds back to last year's budget. Big part of that was Jeremy Hunt's offer for all 2 and 3 year olds and actually even kids over 9 months actually in September will be eligible for more free hours of childcare, and that starts in April. It's £4 billion of money that's being put into this plan, but obviously it's already hitting the buffers. And today, though, LBC has seen new figures which show that up to 50,000 new childcare staff are needed this year alone to deliver that promise. Basically, there's just not enough people working in this sector.
Where do these figures come from?
They come from the Early Education and Childcare Coalition, and they say that if the government need to meet that pledge, they need another 50,000 this year and another 50,000 next year just to meet the pledge that the government has.
And this is the
set.
pledge to provide 15 free hours of childcare every week to every working family.
Everybody of a child over the age of 9 months. So that will kick in from September. But I think from 3-year-olds, it's going to kick in from April. But yes, it's just another example of politicians making these very big promises. But actually, when push comes to shove and when the crunch time comes, they do not have the capacity to put enough staff in the system to deal with it.
When is the crunch time?
So at the moment, childcare providers are asking local authorities how much money they will get per space.
Yes.
And according to the government, so government have provided a number of pots of funding to these local authorities. But at the moment, the government are blaming local authorities, saying they haven't told childcare providers. I think the situation is a little bit more complex than that because they don't exactly know how much money they're getting per child. So they don't know how many spaces they can offer to each person.
And so it's not going to be the case that, I mean, what does disaster look like? It's people just not having a place.
It means a postcode lottery.
They're going to get one, but they're not going to have one. I mean, there simply won't be the capacity in place because the 50,000 staff are unlikely to be hired in the next 10 minutes.
Exactly, and it means that just people in some parts of the country are going to be able to access this childcare, and some parts of the country they're just
some
not going
parts
to
of the
be
same
able to.
town, presumably, or will it all come down to local authority? Well, no, because some of them will be in place. You've got your code, you type it in, you've got a place at nursery. The nursery understands what's going on, so they process the code. They get the money from the council instead of from the parent for 15 hours worth.
Exactly.
And then over the road, the next door neighbour who didn't sign up or who has decided, oh, crikey, that's good, I'll look for a space now. Mm-hmm. So the people probably most advantaged here are the people who already had a space.
Yes, if you've already got a space, and you know the way it works is you ask everybody yearly, would you like to keep your space or not? But it's for the people they're expanding the childcare to more people.
Yet the policy
not enough people
is designed to encourage people who haven't currently got a space to take up a space and therefore be able to continue working.
Exactly, and also
what an almighty palaver.
Yeah. So, so obviously Labour are saying today that the figures actually could be even higher than this. And obviously what happens if, say, the parents and the grandparents that are currently looking after children, so they're already doing 1 or 2 days, and suddenly you're a parent, you go, well, actually, I don't need to because I can try and claim some of this free childcare that the state are offering me. So then what happens? Then they're going to need even more people to do this. And I asked Labour's Bridget Phillipson what she thought of this latest debacle.
This is yet another broken promise from the Conservatives. It's a pledge without a plan, and it's parents and children across our country who will be feeling bitterly let down by yet another broken promise. There were always going to be problems with this pledge because there is no plan to back it up, no plan around creating places, nothing on the workforce that we need to deliver it. So many parents will be feeling bitterly let down by yet another broken promise from the Conservatives.
And on Monday, the Prime Minister, he did admit there were some practical issues he described with the scheme, said that the plans would still be rolled out on time and as planned. But as of yet, I think when we come to April, we are going to hit a crunch point, and there's going to be a lot of people that will not get the places that they think they're going to.
Yeah, so April being the bottleneck, as it were, but it won't be a kind of, the scale of the political problem will be determined in large part by the media, because it will simply be parents. I guess what I'm saying is there's not going to be like crowds of unattended children hanging around outside. There's not a focus. If we're working on a picture desk, there's not a picture here, is there?
No.
That we'd be able to take. I mean, you're going to have a picture of a morose-looking mum who's stuck at home with her kid when she thought she'd be going back to work. You're not going to have a picture of 5,000 children in Trafalgar Square going, "Where's our childcare?" Or that unless someone organises, that's not going to have that kind of moment, that kind of impact.
And we're not even talking about the cost of childcare either, which obviously is incredibly expensive. And there are so many people out there that even when you do get a 15 hours is just not enough for so many people, paying thousands and thousands of pounds every week, every month to secure their spot for childcare so they can go back to work. It's like a second mortgage for so many people.
Yeah, tell me about it. It was bad when mine were young. What's the phone in? Do we get callers from parents or people running childcare centres?
Both. But I think we would like to hear from parents, really. I'd like to hear from parents. Are you struggling?
They will now know what is likely to happen in April, and it is quite possibly nothing.
Yes, exactly. Is your child, are you looking for a spot for your child from April onwards, and you finding it hard to secure that spot, either because your childcare provider is saying, actually, we don't know how much money, or there's just not enough people there to look after your kids?
Thank you. And here it is, actually, Natasha, before you go. This is from Jules, who's in London. We are a small business and have offered jobs to 3 young ladies, who are all planning on returning to the workforce in April. They all have one young child each, so 3 children, 3 mums. Not one of them has signed their contract yet, as they're all concerned they won't be able to get childcare. They were all very positive that they'd get 15 hours free, but not one of them can get any assurance that they will, so they can't sign the contracts. It not only affects the mothers and their families, but also our business, which has had to put employment on hold. We have no idea what to do, as we were very excited about these 3 new employees.
Yeah, and that's obviously the government's plan here, is to get more people into the workforce, to get more people to pay more taxes, to boost the economy, and they can't do that without fixing these really big holes in the childcare problems.
Watch this space. Natasha Clark with an exclusive report there. Many thanks indeed. It's approaching 11 o'clock. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Don't shoot the messenger, which is quite a good pun, actually. But why on earth do we still need 6 days a week postal deliveries? I mean, come on. You'd be telling me we should bring back carrier pigeons next. 3 minutes after 11 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I think one of the more foolish moments that I have inflicted upon you over the years involve me arguing, I think in good faith, I hope in good faith, that libraries were perhaps no longer as necessary as they used to be. And you set me straight fairly quickly on that. But I am very mindful of the temptation to think that change is bad. They're changing something. I don't know how much time you spend on Facebook groups that are dedicated to your town, your hometown. My goodness me, everyone's miserable about everything sometimes. I follow a few, both where I grew up and where I live now. The one where I live now is hilarious because it's undergoing quite a lot of regeneration, and some people are very unhappy about that. And you have to acknowledge that. We've only been there a couple of years, so there are people who've raised their families there, people who've lived there, cradle to the grave, and big changes are disrupting. But one of the funniest comments I've seen recently was, there's going to be a bookshop in the new development, and one of the very miserable contributors replied, "We've already got a bookshop. It's called the Library." And I just thought that was beautiful. You silly sausage. So I just because I'm built a little bit differently from people who think that all change is bad, it doesn't mean I'm always right. Some change is bad. Do you see what I mean? So sometimes, for example, I don't really like self-service tills in supermarkets. Because it A, puts people out of work, and B, causes more kerfuffle than the old-fashioned way of doing things. So not all technological changes are for the best. Sometimes a bank's shutting, I don't really get that upset about. But if I need to get a bunch of cash out at some point soon, and it turns out I have to travel 5 miles to do it, I will be obviously mildly irritated. But the library's conversation was a failure. I was wrong The number of people explaining to me why libraries were still desperately important and still crucial parts of the community just blew me over. I was absolutely destroyed in that conversation, in a nice way. It was all done in a very warm and friendly fashion. And there's a possibility that the same thing will happen with this. There's a possibility that I am missing something rather huge, but I honestly don't think I am. I know I've given you a hint to what it is that we're talking about, but I'm going to go off on another tangent before we open up the phone lines. I'm going to talk about the smoking ban. There were lots of people who didn't want the smoking ban. I think it was, I think it might have been one of the first platforms that Nigel Farage slimed his way onto. That people who didn't want the smoking ban, they didn't want a ban on smoking indoors or smoking in pubs. I have discovered recently, thanks to extraordinary amounts of activity on my bank card, I've discovered a company called Vinted. Have you come across Vinted? Where you can buy pre-owned clothes, pre-owned nice clothes. And I warn you, it's like crack cocaine. I've spoken to people aged between 15 and 25 who all are addicted to Vinted. You get really nice gear at very low prices. But one of the things that struck me about it, and I know this happens on eBay, but I've never bought clothes off eBay. I've never bought second-hand clothes off the internet. They stress in the advertisements for clothes that they live in a smoke-free household. I'm just using this to illustrate how enormous change can be, even though it happens overnight sometimes. The idea now that the residual aroma of cigarette smoke, even after a garment has been through the washing machine, is so strong for younger generations that you stress when selling a second-hand pair of jeans that you live in a smoke-free household. It's incredible. And they're right to do so, because you can buy a second-hand garment that has been washed and upon which you can still detect the smell of nicotine. This must be one of the biggest gaps between the generations, mustn't it? Because when I was young, everywhere was full of smoke. I mean, I'm of an age before the King's Cross disaster, people would smoke like chimneys on the London Underground. Imagine explaining that to a 21-year-old. Every single pub you went into was yellow. If the walls weren't yellow, it was only because they'd been painted blue. The ceiling would be. Everywhere was yellow. You can still see it in some, like the 3 pubs in the country that haven't been turned into quinoa gastro pubs. But everywhere stank of smoke. Going night clubbing, it's a miracle more people didn't get injured. You'd go night clubbing and the whole room was a fug of cigarette smoke. The cinema, everywhere, stank of smoke. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's gone. And what was previously normal, I know it's not an obvious parallel with post office deliveries with the Royal Mail, but it is just pointing out that enormous changes to things that seemed completely normal and that we had always taken for granted are sometimes accommodated by the population very, very easily. You wake up one morning, everything's changed, and nothing's got worse. So, did you know that when Henry Ford invented the motor car, I might be making this up, I should warn you in advance, but that's not a problem because it still works. When Henry Ford invented the motor car, blacksmiths were outraged. Blacksmiths up and down the country, up and down America, were absolutely furious. Blacksmiths saw the writing on the wall. They knew that as the motor car became more popular, so the horse would be consigned to, racing and museums, pets. The horse as a mode of transport would be dead by the time the car took over. And you don't now say, those poor blacksmiths, we should never have got rid of the blacksmiths. So the proposal is this, and it's come via Ofcom. The Daily Mail are up in arms about it, which is normally a trigger for me to think that there is nothing to be up in arms about. But they're absolutely furious. They call it a first-class fiasco. Backlash over plan for Royal Mail that could see letters landing on your mat just 3 days a week. Do you know how much Royal Mail lost last year? £1 billion. Ofcom regulates the Royal Mail in the same way that they regulate me. And one of the proposals they have made in order to start taking some chunks out of these enormous losses is to have fewer deliveries. There's quite a few proposals on the table, cutting deliveries from 6 days a week to 5, or even, as I said, down to 3. Another would be for next day delivery of mail to be scrapped altogether, unless you pay extra for an urgent service. So you'd be looking at least 3 working days to arrive. And the fundamental bottom line is that sustaining the system as it currently stands is probably impossible. Now, I know Henry Ford didn't invent the motor car. I said I was making stuff up. Why are you fact-checking me? I said I was making it up. The whole thing, blacksmiths, everything, carrier pigeons. When the Royal Mail was launched, pigeon fanciers took to the streets in their thousands to object because they knew they'd be out of business by tea time. As soon as the Royal Mail started, all the pigeon fanciers in the land, all the carrier pigeon curators were absolutely furious. They were finished. And video killed the radio star. History is dotted with examples of, let's say, a perforated line between progress and change. So, it's coming up to 12 minutes after 11. The question's pretty straightforward. Why on earth do we need 6 days a week postal deliveries? That's the first sort of traditional, fairly straightforward, two-dimensional radio phone-in. And remember, I was very, very wrong about libraries. I did for reasons that I can't quite remember. I think it was because the Tories were shutting them at a rate of knots, and in a sort of desperate BBC-style attempt to be balanced, I wanted to think that maybe they weren't doing really stupid, dangerous things to the most vulnerable sections of society. And there was actually a rationale for closing libraries. Turns out there wasn't. But I don't think that's going to happen today. Unless you are possessed of some absolute zingers, you're never going to convince me that there's anything to worry about at all with the prospect of postal deliveries being reduced from 6 to 5 or even 3 days a week. 0345 6060 973. Just think for a minute how stupid it is, in my opinion. Actually, stupid's not the right word. How silly it is to think that we need the postal service now to do exactly what it did in the days before email, Amazon and delivery companies. We've got exactly the same provisions within the postal service now that we had before email was invented. When's the last time you don't whatever you do, ring me to tell me when the last time you sent a letter was. It's a figure of speech. It's a rhetorical question. When's the last time you said we encourage the children to send thank you letters? Have a conversation about whether or not etiquette allows a thank you email or a thank you text or a thank you WhatsApp. But the point is this. The only things really that come through your letterbox these days are birthday cards and Christmas cards. And the occasional bill, which you can do online anyway. And I appreciate you don't like being online because you're old or you're a bit behind the times. That's fine. You'll still get your bills, but they'll be dropping through your letterbox 3 times a week instead of 6. There is not a single problem that I can perceive in this proposal, all of which makes it even more remarkable that the Daily Mail has decided to go to town on the story. It's coming up to 11:15. That's question number 1. Why on earth do we need? What possible problem can there be with the suggestion that we cut from 6 days a week of postal deliveries down to 5 or even 3? I'd go down to 1, actually, once a week. And it'd be like the bins. It'd be a different part of town gets their mail on a different day every week. It's Tuesdays is post day. That'd be great, actually. You'd always know when your post was coming or when it was due. 1 day a week. What's the problem? Tell me what the problem is. I don't think you're going to ring me on this, which is why I need to introduce a second subject, or at least a second treatment of the same subject, which is the psychology of it. Where does it come from? Why do you think we are so easily persuaded that change is bad? The reason I mentioned the Facebook groups about hometowns was not just because of the bloke who said, we've already got a bookshop, thank you very much, it's called the library. It was the other one I'm a member of, which is for the town where I grew up. And it's brilliant, and it's beautifully curated by a bloke I know, actually. I've met him since I joined. And he's quite strict about not letting people come on and start waxing lyrical about the good old days. So Kidderminster, my hometown, is a bit of a carbuncle. I think Nicholas Pevsner had some fairly harsh words to say about Kidderminster, the great sort of architectural historian. And part of the reason for that is a very typical former market town experience, or it used to be very industrial, used to have a lot of carpet factories, still has a couple, but there's a lot of concrete in Kidderminster. And when people put up a picture of what the street used to look like, and you've got sort of Tudor beams or you've got beautiful looking old buildings, it's very tempting to say, oh, I wish it was still like that. But it's like being nostalgic for rickets. or nostalgic for scurvy. I mean, it's a silly point. The reason the buildings were pulled down is that they were messy and not functional, and they could have obviously been replaced with nicer looking buildings or stylish buildings. But this temptation to, what's the word that I want? Yes, this temptation to moan about change without stopping to think whether the change is good or bad, necessary or unnecessary. It's a remarkable human condition. Where do you think that comes from? 0345 6060 973. Now, I'm going to warn you, this will probably be quite an old-fashioned phone-in. And by old-fashioned, I may mean boring. But it is a conversation I want to have, and it's a question that I do want answered. But don't phone me to tell me when the last time you wrote a letter was, because with the greatest of love and respect, I couldn't care less. 19 minutes after 11 is the time. Okay, maybe it's not quite as clear-cut as I thought it was. I had somewhat glibly glossed over the job losses that would be involved in this, which obviously is deeply regrettable, and I mean that. But no business can sustain losses of £1 billion a year. And some examples. Remember, I don't want your boring tales of using the Royal Mail. I don't think either of us want that. But I do want to know why reducing it from 6 days a week to 5 or even 3, or under my glorious rule, possibly 1, would be a bad thing. And that the number you need remains the same. And if you fancy it, why do we get so upset about change? There's a good line there about change hurts, but sometimes not changing hurts more. Tony is in Leigh-on-Sea. Tony, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello, Tony.
Just a bit of background. Towards the end of my working life, I was a postman for 12, nearly 13 years, been retired for 6 years, and I witnessed the collapse in letters. From 2004 to 2017, I think I saw the figures last week. It was when I joined, it was 20 billion letters a year.
Yeah.
And last year it was 6 to 7 billion.
Gosh. Well, I mean, go on.
It's just not sustainable financially, unless you want to pay. I mean, first class is £1.25 now. Unless you want to pay something like £3 to send a letter.
Yes.
It can't be done. If you remember a few years ago...
It's economies of scale.
Yes.
Yes.
A few years ago, TNT, who then called themselves Whistle, were allowed into the market to deliver letters. And they cherry-picked where they wanted to go because they thought, we'll pick the most profitable places, or what they thought would be the most profitable places
Sounds familiar.
to deliver to.
Yes.
And they lasted 18 months.
Is that right?
Because it just didn't work for them.
No.
But Royal Mail has to deliver to every household.
So it becomes it was a legal requirement of privatisation, I think, to retain the 6 days a week delivery, because it would have been politically impossible to. And no doubt there are people somewhere counting their filthy lucre who've rinsed the rest of us and ended up owning something that used to belong to all of us, and yet somehow they've ended up rich, and what they own is falling apart at the seams. So I'm familiar with all of the politics, but if you step away from the politics of it, it just has to change. It just has to. And what would you do if I put you in charge? 5 days a week, 3 days a week, 1 day a week?
3 days a week.
3.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Yeah, okay.
Or possibly Monday, Wednesday, Saturday.
Well, no, it wouldn't be the same 3 days for everybody, would it, if you were doing your round, or would it? I don't know.
Well, no, but what we're forgetting, and it hasn't been, in the last couple of days, it hasn't really been put forward in the story.
Well, this is your moment. This is your moment, Tony, to put it forward.
They talk about deliveries, and I think a lot of people are thinking, in fact, I heard a small business person talking as if there would be no deliveries on some days, i.e. there wouldn't be any parcels either. They already deliver 7 days a week now, and they would continue to deliver parcels. We're just talking about letters.
Yes. So it is simply it's being served up quite cynically to upset people who aren't really thinking about it.
No.
And don't know all of the facts like you do, Tony. Thank you. Is it a nice job being a postman?
Well, I can't speak for it now. Talking to my colleagues when I meet them in the street, I wouldn't like to be there now.
Why not? What's changed? Apart from the volume.
Like Amazon workers, they're tracked.
Oh.
They have these PDAs which you use for signing for parcels.
Yeah.
And they're tracked. So they know where they are at any one time out on delivery. They know if they're stationary. So if they're stopped.
And then they get asked about it.
Absolutely.
You can see the management consultant defence of that sort of behaviour,
Of course,
but it's
absolutely.
it's dehumanising, isn't it? It's like, I
But
remember
then they could be talking to an elderly person.
Exactly.
The postman's the only one they say. And I used to come up against this.
Yes.
And of course you want to get away because you want to finish. But you stand and chat.
Yeah, I get that sometimes, Tony. It's 23 minutes after 11. Well, actually, it's not just elderly people. Emma is a young mum. As you know, I don't go out much, they write. I get a lot of deliveries, though. I've had the same 2 posties for 10 years now. We know each other by name. We have a quick and lovely natter every time something's too big for the letterbox. I was genuinely musing only this morning that if I was on my own, then my posties would probably be the first to notice that my routine had changed, or my letters had piled up, or my dogs were frantically barking with no reply. Well, it gives you pause for thought. Of course it does. But it's not, I mean, to be uncharitable or unkind for a moment, it's not a rationale for sustaining a business that's losing £1 billion a year. Is it? The nice bits at the edges, the nice frilly bits at the edges. I don't think it is. I could be wrong. Lewis is in Dundee. Lois, what would you like to say?
I think we should just go to 1 day a week,
Yes,
personally.
I do too. Do you think there is... I mean, the Daily Mail's getting a lot wrong at the moment, but they used to be very good at second-guessing or rather creating anger and then feeding it. Do you think there is a sort of big army of angry people anywhere regarding postal deliveries? Because I can't find them.
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so. And I think in the past, maybe people have been upset about change because look at what the government did when they privatised companies in the past. It's never been
this
successful.
is another example.
I mean, when Royal Mail was sold, it was undervalued and people were able to buy all these shares.
It was undervalued, but equally it was a dying business. So it was quite an odd proposal. It's not like privatising utilities, is it, or railways? Something that is always going to be completely necessary and likely to sustain the current levels of business or grow. The Royal Mail was always going to be doing, letters-wise, not parcels-wise, it was always going to be doing less than it does now.
Yeah, and I remember in city centres we used to see cyclists everywhere. We had to deliver to lawyers every day, but now it's all electronic. So I think it's just a move of the times. All my bills are paperless, so I only get a bank statement in April just to tell me what little interest I've received for the month.
Yes.
I don't think it's necessary. I honestly don't. Parcels we get now, that's fine. But I think 1 day a week for a letter service and keep your parcel service 3 days a week. Save money. It needs to be done.
I think this is an absolute humdinger. It's absolutely nothing like libraries. We haven't heard a single case yet, apart from company. This is it. This sums it up. The only post I get now is advertising, TV licence threats, and the occasional thing from the council. More than 90% goes straight in the bin. I'd be more than happy with a single delivery a week. Everything else I get delivered through Amazon, etc. So, I mean, if there is a consensus here, where does the psychology come in? What is it about this? If indeed some people are upset, and looking at my inbox and indeed my switchboard, I'm not sure anyone's upset by it. Yet another example of the current editor of the Daily Mail, Ted Verity, not having a clue about what his readers care about or want. They'll be back to British homes for British people tomorrow. You mark my words. But there is no argument in favour of keeping it like it is at the moment for the very simple reason that the world has changed and the Royal Mail hasn't. Augustus is in Streatham. Augustus, what would you like to say?
Yeah, good morning, James. I'm just working, so I just stopped in to call you quickly about Royal Mail in terms of what we do in the office.
So are you on the rounds at the moment? Are you on your rounds at the moment, or are you in the sorting?
Yes, I am.
So you're a postman on your round?
Yes, I'm doing my rounds.
Well, I have to apologise to you because you're listening to your favourite radio programme and he's essentially calling for you to be made unemployed. And I don't mean it personally, Augustus. You know that.
Yeah, James, I understand. But I just wanted to say something quickly.
Yes.
About the argument that you've put forward in terms of what Ofcom said, about the post office, our delivery. James, we go to work. As an employee, I get to work at 5:11 in the morning.
Yeah.
To do... as soon as you get to
11,
work,
did you say 5:11?
Yes, in the morning, James.
That's very precise. 5:11. Okay.
Yeah, that's our time we have to log in. Due to the strike, a lot has changed in terms of what we used to do and what we do now.
You live and learn. Go on.
Yeah, so we get in the morning. There is so much that comes in. We have letters that comes in every morning.
Right.
We have parcels that comes in as well. And remember, when we had the strike, there's been a loss of agreement that has been reached. So we are not just delivering letters as it stands now. We have letters and we have parcels.
Yes.
So most of us, we are drivers. So we don't just go out and deliver letters like how Royal Mail used to work before. We have different work in terms of...
So this is the proposal from Ofcom is only about the letter deliveries.
It's only about the letter deliveries.
Yes.
But I'm talking to you as a postman.
I know.
We do.
I know.
As it stands now.
Yes, but you wouldn't stop
don't
doing
just do
most
letters.
of the things you're doing. You just do less letters. You just process letters more slowly.
Yes. But as it stands now, James, I don't think we have enough people to do 3 days in a week.
But you've got enough to do 6.
We have enough people because it's spread across.
You've got me confused now. How can you have enough people to do 6 days a week, but not have...
I'm saying is...
Go on.
No, what I'm saying is, if you're going to cut it down to 3 days, because we have... When you're working for 6 days, then you have, you spread across. But doing 3 days, it will be less, more work, less people, because you're working for only 3 days, not 6 days.
No, you're not. I mean, it wouldn't be the same 3 days all over town, would it? You'd do me on a Monday, and you'd do the people on the other side of the park on a Tuesday.
James, as it stands now, that's what I'm saying. I don't know what the plan is, but it's not feasible. It's not something that, because we have our sorting in terms of what we do every morning. We have to sort to different different houses, different addresses.
I tell you what, we'd come up with a solution to that, though, wouldn't we? We'd work it out. It can't be that difficult. I hear what you're saying, but you're just sort of stuck on your tracks of how you currently do things. If I said to you, right, from now on, we're only delivering letters 3 days a week, you'd just do things differently.
It depends on the changes that you're going to put in.
So we might scrap first class post, for example. So you're never going to get it delivered within one working day of being collected.
So what you're saying is the work will be cut down.
Yeah.
So that we can do our work. If that's the case, then we can.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's what I'm trying to say to you.
I know.
That in the current state, in terms of what they've added on after the strike, if you told me that we are going to do the same work within 3 days, James, it's not possible.
Okay. Are you being tracked at the moment?
Yeah, on my PDA, kind of.
You better crack on, mate.
I have to.
I'll see you soon, all right?
Thank you, James.
Mind how you go. 11:30 is the time. They're tracking me as well. There's people listening to this. I can't believe it. Thomas Watts is here now with your headlines. It is 11:34. What happened when they nixed the second delivery a day? A few of you reminding me of that. I'm not that old. Flipping out. I remember 2 deliveries a day, especially on your birthday. Was there outrage about that? It's a weird one, isn't it? There's a story here. The Daily Mail are encouraging their readers to go nuts about it. I don't think they will. I don't think anybody cares. With a few sort of exceptions, but they're not anywhere near substantive enough to sort of constitute meaningful opposition to the idea. So I worried at the outset that this might be like libraries. So somehow, and I can't remember quite why, I conjured up the idea that closing libraries wasn't such a bad thing. Because the world had changed, the internet. And, of course, I think one of the first callers pointed out to me that the only place where she could use the internet was at the library. So that didn't go well. Kindles, and you don't need it like you used to need. And you do. Libraries are great. We should be encouraging people to use them more, not shutting them down, as David Cameron and George Osborne were determined to do. I told you that story, didn't I? I think I just saw it on Twitter, but something's really hit you. That line about 3 boys in a library, one a bit younger than the other 2, probably the younger brother of one of them. And he just, what, you mean you can take them home? And you don't have to pay? I know that I'm in danger of sounding like that Paul Whitehouse character on the Fast Show, but libraries are amazing when you think about it. They are absolutely incredible. You mean you can take the books home and you don't have to pay anything? That's crazy. A beautiful idea. The one near me, I think, was built by Andrew Carnegie. The Scottish philanthropist. It made a ton of money, didn't he? In metal, I think, in America, and then he built libraries. There's a picture of him outside the local library. Libraries are such an incredible thing. Socialism, I suppose, in a sense. Everybody's equal in a library. Nobody gets first dibs on. Nobody gets to keep anything. It's all collectively owned. It's all shared. Libraries are... I know I sound ridiculous, but I also don't, because I'm right, and you haven't thought about it enough either. Libraries are absolutely fantastic. But the Royal Mail is not the same. I did think for a minute that it might be. I thought there might be a case where you would ring me up and say, it's all very well for you in your ivory tower. But we need the Royal Mail because ... I said, no one is abolishing it. You'll just get your letters a little more sporadically, 3 days a week, say, or 4, or possibly 5. We're back to that lovely quote, aren't we, that I use far too often from King Lear, when one of the nasty daughters just says, what needs one? So he wants 100 troops, the old king. And his daughters are sick and tired of having to pay for them all. So they say, you don't need 100, Dad. You could use 50. You could use 50. Well, I'm going to go and stay with my other daughter then if I can't have 100 with you. And the other daughter says, well, to be honest, I don't think 50 is something that we can accommodate. So he's down to, right, I'll go back to the other one then. She'll let me have 10. Well, I don't know. And then finally, and it's a moment of utter... Is pathos a word? But bathos, I can't remember. I should check on the dictionary, shouldn't I, before I start saying this stuff out loud. And she just goes, what needs one? And Lear realises in that moment that he has emasculated himself. What he thought was an act of epic bounty, generosity, largesse, carving up his country and giving equal portions to his 3 daughters, has already gone wrong because his favourite daughter won't play the game of telling him how wonderful she is, so he disowns her in a fit of pique. And the 2 that end up with half the country each are now completely free to treat him with the contempt that they've secretly felt all along. And that's the moment that the penny really drops. That's the moment that his grip on sanity itself begins to loosen. What needs one? And I feel a bit like that, talking about the Royal Mail. You won't get many people bringing King Lear into this conversation, So I hope you appreciate the efforts I put into this. But I feel a bit like that. So why do we need 6 days a week delivered? Why do we need 5? Why do we need 4? Why do we need 3? We don't need 2. Why do you need 2? What needs one? And there we are. Tony's in Colchester. Tony, what would you like to say?
Hi, good morning, James. First time caller.
Welcome. Are you here to talk about King? Are you here to talk about King Lear or Postal Services?
I'm not here to talk about King Lear, please.
Go on.
I'm about to throw myself out of a truck. Right, regarding Royal Mail, I'm an ex-postman. I only left 6 months ago.
Okay.
And I worked for them for 4 years.
Right.
Basically, the 3-4 day delivery day, it's already happened, James.
Go on.
The only thing is, what happens is, when you come in the morning and you do your sorting, so you sort your letters out, then you sort your small packages, as they call them, and then you sort out your bulk, right?
Yes.
So in the last year, they've started taking the bulk away from the postman. But there are still so many small parcels, you cannot complete your duty or your delivery in your required contracted hours because you have so many of them. So therefore, your manager will go around each morning to each of your frames, as they're called, your sorting frames, and he will say, don't take that, don't take that, don't take that. And then he'll look at the parcels, and then he'll say, actually, don't bother taking any letters.
Wow.
Now, that's why so many postmen were writing to the Labour MP who was scrutinising the post office last year, and the Royal Mail main board was saying, oh, no, we deliver letters 6 days a week. They do not deliver letters 6 days a week. And where this is mainly important is particularly the health service send out most appointments still by letter.
Yes, they do.
Because most elderly people do not have mobile phones or smartphones.
So that is the area of concern, is medical letters, health letters from hospitals to people with appointments.
Banks, things like that, insurance, all those things still go out. Now, I can tell you, James, right, in each bag, we're only supposed to hold a maximum of 16 kilos, I believe.
Yes.
If you've got more than 2 days' mail to deliver on your duty, you ain't got enough bags.
Has anyone ever told you that you sound exactly like Paul Merton?
No.
I've got 4 text messages. I've got 4 text messages saying exactly the same thing. Reese in Barnsley says, why is Paul Merton phoning you up and pretending to be a postman?
No, I'm not Paul Merton.
I know you're not Paul Merton.
I love his money.
Yeah, well, but I was sitting here thinking, your voice reminds me of someone. I glanced at my inbox and there it is, loads of people. So, is that part of the reason why you left, or you just had enough?
No, I left because the money I was doing on average 12 hours a day. I was walking between 14, 17 miles a day. 6 days a week, and I was taking home barely taking home £500 a week.
Lordy.
And I just thought, this is, and your contract of employment is for 25 hours, then that way they haven't got to pay pension contributions to you. Because anybody who's joined the Royal Mail in the last 3 or 4 years, you're on a low-hour contract. But they said, don't worry about it, because you can make your money up with overtime.
But you lose
Because once you're sick, and they don't contribute towards your pension.
Interesting, isn't it? That's what happens when you privatise, and that's just absolutely par for the course. So I've got the picture now of what is happening, and I sense it almost answers my next question, which is, what do you think of officially reducing it to 3 days a week or 5 days a week?
I don't understand why the Royal Mail management-wise. I used to work in print, and I was part of management, and I can honestly tell you that the middle management, and not all the general managers, but 90% of the ones I've met are the most appalling managers that I've ever had.
Yes.
The thing. Now, there were one or two brilliant people that were supported by the people, and most of them, the ones that I knew, all took redundancy about a year and a half ago.
You didn't work in Oxford. You didn't work in Oxford, did you?
No, I didn't.
Good, because I've got a Royal Mail manager from Oxford on the other line. I thought you might have been slagging him off.
No, I'm not slagging. No, it's just it's like any big global or big organisation that promoted people who actually couldn't do the job on the shop floor, so they put them in the office, and then over time they've now grown into roles which they're not capable of doing.
Sounds like radio.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Tony. Mind how you go. Get back in the truck. 11:05. Squeeze in Robert in Oxford. Robert, what would you like to say? From the perspective, I believe, of being a Royal Mail manager, but categorically not one of those people who couldn't cut the mustard on the shop floor, so got promoted into an office role.
Well, actually, I was a postman back when I left school in 1978.
There you go.
Just for 6 months, and then I came back as a postman 6-7 years ago.
Oh, gosh.
A part-time job, because I'd had another career. I thought, you know what I used to like doing? I used to like delivering mail. So that's what I did.
I can imagine.
And due to my sort of background, they asked me if I wouldn't mind being a manager. So I grew into that role, and it's a fantastic job.
What do we think about 3 day a week deliveries?
I've been barking up this tree for the last 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
There's absolutely no reason why we can't do it. They're talking about 5 days,
yes.
And I think it's a political thing that Mr. Sunak's doing here when he said not on his watch, because he's talking about trying to keep many people happy, but most people would be just happy to get their mail every other day,
yes.
Realistically.
And that would address the concerns about hospital appointments. Scott's been in touch to say, I got my letter confirming my emergency throat operation after the operation. If I hadn't got the text, I'd not have known it was happening. So, I mean, the system is not exactly working perfectly, is it?
No, it's not working perfectly. But if you look at the management of the last, say, 5 years, it's been like Squid Game. Because they set the parameters, and then just as you're getting it right, a new CEO comes in and says, "Okay, what we'll do, we're going to put that in place, and that's going to make it a tiny more complicated for you."
Yeah.
And then someone else comes in with a new idea, and unfortunately, the previous CEO we had was possibly the worst. It came in with, I don't know what sort of ideas and where it actually comes from. So I'm speaking as a manager, but I don't know how high up these decisions are made. But just a few things. About the 1 day a week wouldn't be possible, because the build-up of mail would be so much that we just wouldn't...
You wouldn't be able to touch the sides. No, that was my stupid suggestion. But three or 4 days a week is feasible.
No, you're looking from the point of view of the recipient. You could receive your letters 1 day a week, but it wouldn't be possible to send 1 day a week.
It was a stupid suggestion for which I apologise.
And also, was it Dave? I'm not sure, the person who phoned who'd retired, but we prioritised mail parcels, and this was discussed in the select committee. It's not that we prioritise parcels. If we don't deliver the parcels, especially the large parcels, when they're due on that particular day, the second day we've got twice as many, and there just is no space to put anything, and it does create a health and safety issue. Also, people are generally waiting for their parcels, much less for their letters. And NHS letters was, as a suggestion, could be what we did during the pandemic. They coloured their envelopes blue so we could see the ones that needed their vaccine, and we could pick those out.
That's the only thing that. So you could pick those out and deal with them urgently. Deal with them much. That's really interesting, because that's I always have a slight Joni Mitchell moment at times like this, Robert.
Nice.
You don't know what you've got till it's gone. Don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. And I did worry slightly that there might be something that could happen where we'd go, crikey, if only we still had 6 days a week delivery. And the pandemic was kind of like that. But I think you've assuaged my
And just one last thing about people who've been afraid of change. I mean, posties are fantastic people. They love doing their job, and when they don't want to change, they always they're talking about their customers. They're not talking about anything else, about their, getting back early or so forth.
No, they're a good bunch.
They're a good bunch, and they don't want to change it, and because they're afraid that any new changes, as they have seen the last few years, has been to the detriment of the customer, unfortunately. I have a great team.
Once bitten, twice shy. You sound like a great manager, actually, Robert. I mean that most sincerely. I really do, and a timely corrective, actually, or not a corrective, but just a counterbalance to the blame being apportioned to management by a previous caller, although you were doing the same. You were just going a bit further upstairs than he was for all of the problems. I'm thinking that we possibly shouldn't have been so snobbish. Snobbish, not quite the right word. Strict. Shouldn't have been so strict about post-based anecdotes. We could perhaps have had some fun with post-based anecdotes, because Brad's been in touch. I quite like this one. Post is terrible where I live, James. My friend had her car stolen. Where do you think this one's going? We're having a phone in about post, and now we've got a stolen car. I mean, we had King Lear a minute ago, so you shouldn't be that surprised. My friend had her car stolen. It was recovered and taken to a garage less than 2 miles from her home. They sent her a letter giving her 7 days to collect her car, otherwise it would be crushed. She received the letter on day 10, by which time her car was no more. That's from Brad. It is 11:52, and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. That was nice. I've had a message from a postie in South East London that says, please, could you forward my details to the very eloquent and erudite manager who was on just now? I despair of the morons I have to work with and hope to find a delivery office manager with more than sawdust between his or her ears. Can we do that? I mean, it's a bit of a trek from South East London to Oxford, but can we put them in touch with each other? I'd be like the Cilla Black of the Postal Service. If he gets a gig with the other fella, with Robert, if Nick gets a gig with Robert, I will be the match. Can we do that? Can we do that, please? Can we just... Probably not. We're probably breaking all sorts of data protection laws, probably already broken all sorts of data protection laws. And Keith did a funny. Keith actually did a genuine funny in the break there. I gave you a post-based anecdote about Brad's friend's car getting crushed because she didn't get the letter in time. And Keith said in my ear, he said, the thing about post-based anecdotes, he said, they always deliver. We've got a real comedian in the studio. Matt Green is here. Now, the reason why your new tour is called That Guy is because you are that guy. People who... have we got cameras on at the moment? We have, haven't we? If you're watching it on YouTube, you've already gone, oh, it's that guy. It's that guy. But you're not watching it on YouTube at the moment. So how do we describe that guy? That guy.
Well, nice to be here. Yeah, I called it That Guy because I think, as you say, I'm that guy. You've probably seen me if you're interested in politics and Twitter and things like that. I do lots of funny sketches about politics on social media. But I'm also someone who's done lots of things over the years. I've been doing stand-up for years and I've done lots of bits of acting. So I pop up on things and I always know when one of my things is on because I get a few tweets or texts from people. Hang on, was that you? Was that you? Like I was on Doctor Who just before Christmas, which was very exciting.
Yes.
And people going, was that you? Was it him? So yeah, I thought I'd call my show that because I feel like that's how people know me.
And a few adverts as well, which I think get watched more than anything else, don't they?
That's
really?
Probably true. Yeah.
So I'm interested in because you've mentioned social media already. Did things change for you during lockdown? Did you? Because you did. I think that's where I first really came to appreciate your work because we were in a Gobi desert of entertainment in many ways, and doing the news was quite dispiriting, as you can imagine. And you found a way, particularly when you did the sort of fake politicians and fake journalists interviewing each other. You found humour in the darkest of times.
Yeah, I think it definitely was lockdown where I started making these little clips. I'd done a few bits and pieces like that before, but I'd always been more focused on live work. And then, of course, everything disappeared in lockdown. There were no stand-up gigs. There were a few online gigs, but they weren't really taking very much time. So I just thought, I've got to do something to keep myself sane, let alone anybody else. And I didn't really do it with any expectation that people would watch them initially. But, I put a few out, so people started watching them, and, the rest is history.
And has it changed your sort of status when you go on the road? You've got a tour starting on at the beginning of February in Cardiff on Saturday the 3rd of February. Do you have a bigger audience now? Have you reached a bigger...
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, I've never been able to do a full tour before. I've been doing gigs around the country and circuit gigs, but I'd never put a show on just under my own name, and this is the first time I've done it, and I've already, some of the venues are sold out, some are selling quite well. I've just added a new date in London in March, which is very exciting, on the 7th of March at the 21 Soho. So it's great. It's the first time, and I've been doing these previews where people have been coming who already sort of know who I am a little bit, and that's so nice. It's such a difference to walking on stage at a club where people have no idea who you are.
I've always been slightly intimidated by the thought of that. It takes a strange character, doesn't it, to want to go and expose yourself in that way. Whereas here, you're kind of halfway there already because people have chosen to come and see you.
Yeah, and hopefully they know the kind of things I do and the kind of things I'm interested in.
So what can people expect? What can we expect from how much of it is you? How much of it is in character? And how much is political? Do you even know yet?
I do pretty much know. I've been sort of building it over the last year or so, and I've been doing various previews and things. So yeah, it's very much in two halves. The first half is character comedy. It's my character that you'll have seen if you've seen any of my sketches, the Right Honourable Geoffrey MP, who is the Tory MP who's always on all these various different shows, defending the government, that kind of stuff. He can't believe he's in LBC with James O'Brien. I mean, he's the Wokemeister General. I did check out your book, I have to say, James, and I was disappointed I wasn't in it. That's what I'm saying.
I'll put you in the paperback.
Thank you very much. When I say I read the index, obviously that's what I did. So he's very much the first half, and that's a lot of fun. And I can put things in, pretty much up to date topical references into that bit. And then the second half is more stand up. So it's me doing bits and pieces of it's like my favourite routines from the last few years, plus quite a lot of political stuff, plus basically talking about what it's like being that guy, being the person who makes these videos, and the responses I've had, that kind of stuff.
I had a bit of shtick about. I quite like this joke. It's not my own, but you'd say something would happen, like Nadine Dorries, for example, and I'd like to say, "Gosh, it's the satirists I feel sorry for." How on earth do you? But actually, it's been quite a rich period for people like you. The madder politics gets, the harder it becomes to parody. You think as an outsider, but actually, there's loads of material there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I don't know if I've pioneered this, but I've certainly kind of come up with a thing where a lot of the time, if someone does one of these speeches or writes an article, like I did one yesterday about the Simon Clarke article, the bits in it that are almost the silliest are the real bits. I quote a few things verbatim and just see if people notice. And so I make some things up and then put real things in. And quite often people go, what was real, what wasn't? And that's kind of, for me, the fun bit. Is
it's also terrifying.
Oh, it is scary. Yeah, I mean, definitely there's a certain amount of sort of laughter in the dark, definitely.
And you're doing the whole Cardiff, Birmingham, Guildford, the whole thing. So where do people go to find out more, Matt, about the tour?
You can find me on social media at Matt Green Comedy or mattgreencomedy.com. All my dates are on there.
That's nice. Clive from Bedfordshire is listening.
That's good to know.
I've been asked to pass that on to you. It says,
Thanks, Clive.
Tell Matt that Clive from Bedfordshire is listening.
Good.
So you live and learn. And Patrick wants to know, what role did you play in Ali G in the House?
Good question. I was the Englefield Green Massive. And I can still do that. There's the gang sign.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, there it is. I can still do it. It's still there. It's in my head.
And finally, how do you keep a secret like Doctor Who? Because presumably you filmed it ages and ages ago and nobody knew. You're supposed to be a professional show-off. How on earth do you keep quiet about something like that?
It genuinely was quite difficult. We filmed it 18 months before we did it, sort of May last year. 2 years ago now. Basically, there's a very strict NDA, non-disclosure agreement thing where you have to sign it and say, you're not even allowed to tell, your family, and Most of those I'm not too bothered about, but the Doctor Who one felt like, I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to get into trouble or worst of all, don't want to get cut.
Oh, that would be terrible, wouldn't it? Who did you tell them?
I think I just told, very close friends and family, and luckily they weren't, that bothered. So I was like, okay, fine.
Desperately exciting. Matt Green, that guy, kicks off on Saturday the 3rd in Cardiff. But as Matt said, if you go to Matt Green Comedy, you will be able to get hold of your tickets. Lovely to see you. You're only here because I'm desperate to be liked. I met Matt after an event I did not long ago, and obviously I knew who he was. I said, look, it's that guy. And then I said, oh, you must come on the show. And you actually followed up on it.
I know.
Respect for that. I said, I'm very, very glad you did. It's lovely to see you. And best of luck with it. It's going to be brilliant. It's 12 noon.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Mystery Hour with James O'Brien.
It's 3 minutes after 12. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. My Mystery Hour is now apart. I've forgotten about Mystery Hour. That happens sometimes on Thursdays. You hadn't. Phone lines are filling up. Well, you better be quick. Let's just put it that way. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need if you have a question which is in desperate need of an answer, or indeed if you hear somebody asking a question to which you know the correct response. My favourite contribution of the week will win a Mystery Hour board game. A new look. Well, actually, I don't know whether you get the new look one or the old look one. We launched a new look one this week at the Toy and Games Fair at Olympia. I was there with Stephen Mulhern. Has about 5 board games, and our board games are made by the same company, Big Sky Games. So Stephen is there levitating people and doing magic tricks, and he's got his catchphrase one, and he's got his deal or no deal one, and he's got his magic. So, and I'm there with my. Well, look, size isn't everything. That's what I'm saying. But we've got a new smaller Mystery Hour box. It's much tidier. Same game, but a little bit smaller and neat anyway. And there is, for those of you who have been asking, there is a booster game on the way, like a refresh pack, a booster pack coming before the end of the year. So it's all happening in Mystery Hour land. But I have to say, being in an event like that was quite surreal. Who'd have thought when we started doing this on the radio, just as a way of filling an hour on an election day, because you're not allowed to talk about politicians on election days. Who would have thought that a few years later, all right, quite a lot of years later, I would be at the Toy and Game Fair at Olympia, fighting off fans. I was fighting off fans who were there to see the game, and I even got a celebrity endorsement. I don't know if you saw it on Twitter yesterday. The lovely Sean Wallace off The Chase, the Dark Destroyer on The Chase. He's a big fan, huge fan of the game, which was really nice, actually, because he obviously knows what he's talking about. And he said he wasn't very good at it, which I suspect is not true, because if you've ever seen him on The Chase, he knows everything. But he's quizzing royalty, so it's a fantastic endorsement, if that's the right word to get. But I wonder if he's any good at the bluffing, because the best thing about the game is the bluff. You get a right answer, a wrong answer on your card, but then you get the opportunity to make up your own wrong answer. And the real victory lies, we were all talking about this actually on Tuesday, the real victory lies in coming up with a really good wrong answer, a really good bluff. So that's the trick. You come up, it's like an Earl of Dartmouth type answer. You know, who invented darts? Well, it was the Earl of Dartmouth, because they were having archery practice on the butts, as all aristocrats at that time were obliged to do, and it started raining, and they went indoors to the Great Hall at Dartmouth Castle, and one of his serfs came up with the idea of whittling down the arrows into little sort of darts, as they subsequently became known, and they would throw those at a much smaller target so they could practice indoors, and it became known as Dartmouth's folly, and it was shortened to darts in the 17th century, and that's how darts was invented. And that's not true. I made that up many years ago, but it has now received. You've probably met someone. If you ever meet someone and the conversation of darts comes up, just say, who invented darts? And there's a 50-50 chance now. It's so successful, this myth. There's a 50-50 chance that they'll say, well, it was the Earl of Dartmouth. It was the Earl of Dartmouth. 7 after 12 is the time. I forgot. Oh, yeah, Mystery Hour. So there we are. That was my Mystery Hour game anecdote from Kensington Olympia Toy and Fair. And whoever comes up with the best contribution of the week can win one. Whether it's the old look one in a big box or the new look one in a little box, I don't actually know. But either way, it's a glittering prize. The full terms and conditions are at lbc.co.uk. And if you want to buy your own, go to mysteryhour.co.uk or John Lewis. 12:07 is the time. Shall we crack on? Let's crack on. Alex is in Cheshire. Alex, question or answer?
It's a question, James. Good afternoon.
Hello, carry on.
Firstly, thank you for keeping my ears company whilst I was in the dentist chair having a filling. So thank you for the last hour of entertainment.
Is that today?
Yeah, literally just coming from the dentist.
And you're allowed to do you're allowed to do that? I'd never thought about putting my head, even as the drill goes and everything. You've got me in your ears.
Exactly that. Noise cancelling, blocking out the sound of that drill. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. That's nice to know. It's a shame it's not 2:30.
I knew you were going to come up with that joke.
It's in my contract. Carry on. What's your question?
Question: glow in the dark, the emergency exit signs and those stars that we've all had in our bedrooms, or the kids have got in their bedrooms, or you've still got in there on the bedrooms, on the ceiling. How does that work? I know it's not capturing the light, but it's the reaction that's happening. And a little trick is if you've got an LED light or the light on the back of your phone, it makes them significantly brighter. But it's just the chemistry or the mechanics of how that glow in the dark is working.
Is it luminous? Is it called Is it luminous? What's the word for glow? The stuff that glows in the dark. I can't remember. But you mean literally you turn all the lights off and it's there glowing away, and there's no batteries in it or anything like that.
No batteries. You see them on fire extinguisher or fire exit sign. You've probably got one above your door now. That sort of thing.
I don't know what we've got here, but we certainly had them on the ceiling when my girls were young. They're really cool, actually. They're quite magical, and as you say, you can sort of charge them up with LED lights. I like that question, Alex. You sound pretty good. They're not numb at all. No numbness around the.
It's starting to wear off a little bit.
Just the one filling, was it? Just the one filling.
Just on today.
Okay. Well, take care. Mind how you go. 9 minutes. You're lucky to get a dentist appointment. 9 after 12 is the time. James is in Brittany. James, question or answer?
It's a question.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Yes. Now, why do we, in English, write I with a capital letter?
I know.
Or it's typed.
I know this.
Oh, good. Is it to do with printing?
Yes, that's it. Yes. So you mean as opposed to in France where the je is lowercase?
And ich in German, yes. and there's no grammatical reason for it, is there?
No, there isn't, but it is. You've answered it, but not answered it. It is to do with printing. I can't remember why. I think this has come up. It might even be in the board game. It looks like a T, or no, that's not it. Keith is gesticulating to me, but I'm never going to understand what he's trying to communicate through the medium of dance. He's never going to. So the I. No, I'll put it on the board. No round of applause for me today. No, thank you, James. 10 minutes after 12 is the time. Luminescent. Is that the word? Luminescent? Is that the word I was looking for? That's a great word. Luminescent. Aaron is in Chichester. Aaron, question or answer?
Hi, James. Hello. It's a question.
Carry on.
How come we get no great white sharks in the UK waters?
It's too cold, isn't it?
No, because you get them in New Zealand.
It's warmer there.
It's not.
Is it not?
No,
Are you sure?
I checked that before I asked the question. Made a fool of myself on national radio.
No, I mean, you wouldn't have made a fool of yourself. So what? I mean, what reason do you think it is, as it were?
I don't know. That's why I thought I'd come on here and see if someone's brighter than me's got any answers.
Why particularly the great white shark, as it were?
I'm just fascinated with sharks. I know we get the odd dog shark, dogfish or whatever it's called. We get that. But I grew up in Selsey, which is known as Seal Island. So we've got plentiful food down there for them. So why don't we get any great whites?
Yeah, you're on. Why don't we have any great whites? I mean, you don't want them, do you, particularly?
Well, I'm fascinated by sharks. So, I wouldn't mind seeing. I'd love to do a cage dive. That's on my bucket list.
Is it?
And if it meant that I didn't have to go to another country to do that.
Nice, you could do it down Margate. That'd make life a lot easier, wouldn't it?
There we go. See?
It could be a post-Brexit benefit, this. So maybe they'd tempt them in. They'd get some great white sharks off the Kent coast.
Perfect.
You're on. Right, why don't we have great white sharks in British coastal waters? 0345 6060 How do luminescent substances work? Things that glow in the dark but they're not plugged in or battery powered. And why does the English language, written language, have a capital I for I, as in I am, I? Why? Why I? Why I? Carl's in Kidderminster, God's own country. Are you part of Phil Brown's Red and White Army, Carl?
Sadly not, James, but I do go to the Plough in Shenstone.
Lovely pub. Question or answer?
It's a question.
Carry on.
What's the determining factor as to whether a belly button is an outie or an innie?
Oh, just the knot, isn't it? The way the midwife has tied the knot, I think.
Is it? Or is it genetic? Or?
No, it can't be genetic. It's a knot in a tube, isn't it? Isn't it?
Well,
isn't it?
I don't know.
No, nor do I now. It's the fallopian tube, and they cut it because you get the clip. You get no.
I don't think. No, I don't.
Not the fallopian tube. The umbilical cord.
Yeah, the umbilical cord.
And then you cut it, and they've got to tie a knot in it to stop it being.
I just clamp it from memory when my daughter was born.
Really?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, the question's getting more interesting by the minute, isn't it? You're on, eh? Yeah, okay. Why do some of us have innies and others have... Good Lord, that's one of those questions. I've been doing this for so long. This is episode 501 if you're listening on the podcast. Welcome, by the way, and thank you. 501 episodes. And I can't remember ever having done the innie-outie question before, the outie-innie. Why do some of us have innies and some of us have... I've got in my head the notion that it's because the midwife ties a knot in it. And the quality, you're shaking your head. So why do you think it is then? Why do some of us have innies and some of us have outies? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Why are there no great white sharks in British coastal waters? Why do we capitalise the I in the English written language, I am, and how do luminescent substances actually work? Michael's in Sheffield. Michael, question or answer? Michael.
Hello.
Hello,
James. How are you?
Very well, mate.
Good
How are
afternoon.
you? Oh, good afternoon to you. Question or answer?
Question.
Carry on.
Why is it that when I go walking in the peaks and look up on a clear night, I can see stars?
Yeah.
But when you're actually in space, and you see photographs from space, there are no stars in the background.
What?
When you look at... When you saw
No,
the
I
men
know
on
the
the moon,
first bit. You can see stars when you're out and about.
yeah, but when you're actually in space, when you see photographs from space, people in space, people floating, spacewalking, there are no stars in the background. Why?
Because they're lit.
They're all over.
Because they're lit.
Well, why don't you see them if you're in space?
Because the lights are on.
Closer to them. How do you mean the lights are on?
They've shined a light on the thing they're taking a photograph of.
Nah, no, I don't believe that.
It totally is.
No.
It is.
No.
It is.
No, it's just pitch black up there. There is absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
You don't see
and then
anything.
you'd see the stars if it was pitch black. But the minute you turn, it's like the camera's got a flash on it. If you, yeah, you go out right tonight with a camera with a flash, take a picture of the sky, and you won't see any stars in the picture that you've taken with the flash on.
You sure about that?
Yeah, positive, 100%.
All right, I'll ring you next week if it doesn't work.
Well, yeah, let me know how you get on. So, but all right, I think that's correct. I'm leaving it on the board. Why, when you see, because just to clarify, you've never been to space, have you?
No, but I've seen pictures of people when they're in space.
Turn all the lights off in space.
Well, if they
Look
turn
out
all
the
lights
window.
off, then
Look out the window.
everything-
There'll be loads of stars, mate.
No, when you see people, when you see people when they're remote from the spacecraft and they're floating or they're on a
But
line,
how can you see them
you
though?
don't see
How can you
anything in the sky?
How can you see them in the dark nothingness of space?
But the sun would be shining.
Because
The
the
sun would be
lights are
shining.
on. The lights are on. You can't see stars when the sun's out.
No, but when you're in space, it's dark, so there must be light coming from
But
them.
it can't be dark, can it? Because you can see him. And that's why you can't see any stars. I think I'm close to the right answer on this one, Michael, but I'd be surprised if you accepted it at this stage.
I don't accept it, and I think you may be close, James.
I think I might be close as well. I'm groping in the darkness, but someone's about to turn on the lights.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
20 minutes after 12 is the time. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Well, Mystery Hour continues. Should we just crack on, shall we? Yasmin's in Leicester. Yasmin, question or answer?
Answer, please, James.
Carry on, Yasmin.
Right, it's in answer to the guy who rang to say, why do things glow in the dark?
Yes.
So this is a science question.
No kidding. You mean it's not magic?
It's not magic at all. So it's all to do with electrons. So the structure of the atom contains electrons. Electrons are whizzing around a nucleus. Now, if you think about electrons and every other material that we've got, everything is at rest until you excite it.
Yes.
So if you think of your electrons as being like children.
Children?
They're all at children.
Okay.
They're all at rest. You feed them some sugar. They gain energy.
Yeah.
And then you can't just put them to bed. They've got to expend that energy somehow. So you let them have a run around.
Yeah.
And that energy is expended. Right. So what happens with the electrons in these materials, light is shone at the electron and light is energy. So those electrons absorb that energy from the light and they get all excited.
Right.
Now, they stay in that excited state until they somehow manage to expend that energy. And the way they expend the energy is by letting out the light. But some materials let out light immediately, which is fluorescence. So think of your hi-vis jacket.
Yeah.
So your hi-vis jacket, as soon as a light shines on it, it looks like there's a light shining back at you.
Yeah.
That is your headlamp hitting the cyclist hi-vis, getting absorbed as energy by those electrons. The electrons get excited, and immediately as they've got excited, they then fall back to their base level, and in doing so, emit that light back.
Okay.
As that energy back as light. So that's fluorescence. So the plastic items that glow in the dark, your stars put on your kitchen ceiling and things on the walls, is same principle. So the electrons get excited by light energy during the day, but they retain that energy.
Okay.
They keep hold of it. And they don't come back to ground level quite so fast as your hi-vis jacket material does. They come back slowly over time. So because that energy is being expended slowly over time, it's being emitted as light slowly over time.
Yeah.
Therefore, that piece of plastic, the star on the kid's ceiling or the globe on the wall or whatever, is emitting light, apparently in the dark, but it's energy that was already taken in during the day when light had hit it. So those electrons are losing their energy slowly. So think of it in terms of they get a hit of energy. Some electrons expend that energy straight away, light coming back at you.
I understand.
And some of them expend that energy slowly, and they don't. So that's your two different materials that look as if they're emitting light. I am a PhD electrochemist and a former university lecturer in chemistry.
That'll do nicely. Have a round of applause on me. What was your PhD, Sub? What was your PhD?
It was in electrochemistry.
But what was the title?
Oh, it was conducting polymers. I was working on getting polymers to conduct electricity so we could replace copper wires, but
look at that. Fantastic.
Didn't quite get there.
I don't understand any of that, but I know that you're supposed to say that to PhD people. What was your PhD? What did you do? What was the title? Well done. Bad luck. I mean, well done for the round of applause. Bad luck for not solving the polymer problem that you said a minute ago. Alex is in Harlow. Alan is in Harlow. Alan, question or answer? Do you know what I did then, Alan?
I don't.
What?
You confused Alan with Alex, I think.
Yeah, because you're in Essex. And I glanced at the screen. I just glanced at the screen. I saw Alan in Harlow in Essex, and I said Alex. But anyway, enough of the banter.
And forgiven.
Question or answer?
Good afternoon, first of all. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to take you from outer space, one of your questions, to deep inner space.
Oh, yes.
What happens when we extract billions and billions of barrels of oil from deep underneath the oceans?
We do.
There must be a cavern there.
Yes.
Cathedral-like.
Yes.
You know, and nature abhors a vacuum, so surely this must be filled with something and must have an effect on sea levels, perhaps.
Well, I mean, it's obviously filled with seawater.
Is it?
Yeah. But when is interesting, isn't it? So, you know, it's like if you think of a bottle. And you pour half...
a tsunami or something.
Exactly. So the minute where they allow the water into the now depleted cavern, you'd think would have some sort of effect on... Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe it's not that...
We're talking billions and billions of barrels, James.
Yeah, we are.
Some kind of effect.
It's a good question. It's a good question.
I wonder why it hasn't been raised in the past, because
we don't know that it hasn't, Alan.
Yes, perhaps.
We don't know that it hasn't. That's the thing about...
You look around, James, and you see all these cars, and they're all petrol-driven, and petrol's everywhere. There must be massive caverns.
Yes, but it hasn't all come out of one well, has it?
No.
But you think of the biggest well, the biggest oil drilling exercise in history, the size of the hole that must have left when they took all the oil out of it. Obviously, if it's underwater, then it will be full of water now. If they're not drilling anymore. But what happened?
You reckon?
Yeah, I reckon. Yeah, I reckon.
I mean, because this could be miles under the seabed.
So you think they might just leave it empty? They might just leave it empty.
Yes, well, if they do, and we're having problems with the low-lying islands...
Oh, we're losing your line now. We're losing your phone line now. But you have piqued both my interest and my curiosity, because, I mean, why have I never seen footage of what it's like after they've taken all the oil out? Maybe it's not... I mean, with fracking, it's not like a big cavern, is it? It's anyway, you understand the question. You don't need me to explain it or repeat it. Thank you, Alan. A lot of love for Yasmin. Andy says, I want this lady to teach my kids. State says, I hope this lady is a science teacher. She's brilliant. Well, she's not anymore. The electrons lady is amazing. I hope I always remember how she explained this. That's nice, isn't it? There you go. Every day's a school day, especially Thursday. Phil's in Bournemouth. Phil, question or answer?
I should answer, James.
Carry on, Phil.
It's the stars in space. Why can't you see them?
Now,
even though you're in space.
This is a photography question, isn't it? Not an astronomy question.
Yeah, you were right, really.
Yeah, nice one. Go on.
Because if you actually went outside in the dark here and tried to take photos of the stars, you wouldn't get them on your camera either, unless you let it expose for a long time.
Right.
And when you do that, it lets a lot of light in, and you have to be very steady, and you have to set up. Turn with the Earth and everything.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a nightmare, really.
So
when you're in space and there's when they're on the moon, they were saying, "Oh, we can see the stars," and then when they took photos, there's no stars in any of the photos, and people going, "Oh, they weren't really there," because the camera could only it was exposing all the light in front of it, like
that's what I said. I mean, it's kind of obvious when you think about it. I don't think that Michael was a sort of conspiracy theorist. Do you?
No.
But he sounded genuinely curious, but the conspiracy theorists point to this, do they, as proof that Neil Armstrong never actually landed on the moon?
Yeah, because he said there were stars, and when they had photos...
Yeah, couldn't see the stars because the light is in there. You wouldn't get anything on the film.
Yeah, and any film from ISS and all that, there's no stars, and people go, oh. But that's because the light's inside and the Earth's lit.
Of course
it
is.
As well.
Of course it is. Qualifications?
Amateur astronomer.
Oh, yeah.
I can't even say it properly.
I'm glad you don't have to, do you? As long as you can look through a telescope, you're golden. What's the appeal? What's a moment? What's a holy grail moment for an amateur astronomer?
Actually, just looking. If you look up at the planet Jupiter or Saturn,
yes,
it's just a dot in the sky. But when you look actually through a telescope, you see it's actually there, and you see the moons and everything.
Oh, wow.
That's quite amazing.
Yeah.
And when I show them my friends, they go, "Wow!"
Yeah, I bet they do
as well.
I bet they do. Well, it's got you a round of applause, Phil.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you.
That. No, well played, mate. Nice one. It's coming up to 12:30, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. So at the moment, we've done quite well on the glow in the dark, and we've done quite well on the stars in space. That was Phil. Why are there no great white sharks in British coastal waters? Why do we have a capital I in the English language for the, is it the possessive pronoun I? No, that's my. I. Definite article? I don't know. Anyway, I. Why? Why I? Why I? Oh, I didn't realise it was a Geordie question now. Why I in the written English language? And what happens to the place where the oil was after you've taken all the oil out? And the belly buttons question as well, which the reason why I glossed over that actually is because I feel I know I made a bit of a fool of myself in several ways. Well, at least it's live, eh? Amelia Cox is here now with the headlines.
Mystery Hour with James O'Brien. This is LBC.
12:34 is the time. Just a special message for a caller called Alan, who rang in a minute ago. Mate, you can't just ring in and guess. You have to know the answer, or at least believe that you know the answer. If we took calls from people just having a bit of a think out loud, well, everyone would turn like me, and no one wants that. So thank you, Alan, but do better next time. 12:34 is the time. Tom's in Leicester. Tom, question or answer?
Question.
Carry on.
When and why did humans first start to shave their facial hair?
That's a good one, isn't it?
Because, like, when you see artists' impressions of, like, early sapiens and stuff, they didn't have big beards. Then, Jesus had a beard and all that. But then, like, what's the reason for it? And when did it start? When did people start to do it? Maybe it's hygiene. I don't know, but it just seems a bit random. Like, they had long head hair, apparently, but then not big beards, apparently.
When did shaving start?
Yeah,
it's a really good question.
Thank you.
Isn't it?
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Do you want to know something awful?
Go on.
Well, I was about 14 or 15 years old, right? And I'd never shaved. And just at that, some of the lads at school, so I was at boarding school, so some of the lads at school started shaving. There was one lad called Jonathan. I won't say his surname because it would be indiscreet. He was shaving twice a day when he was 13. Quite extraordinary. I've never known anyone as hairy as him. But it was quite a good thing. It's like a rite of passage, shaving. Yeah. And I was in King Lear, actually. It's come round again. It's bizarre. It's haunting the programme today, King Lear. I was playing Kent in King Lear and I had to have a beard. So they made a beard. And what they do in hair and makeup is they use copy decks as a basis for your beard.
Right.
And then put bits of fluff on it. Do you see what I mean? So you like making a beard like that. And all of the older boys, I was supposed to be, Tom, I bet you're wishing you hadn't rang in now, aren't you? I was going to be playing Goneril, one of the daughters, and they cast it at the end of the Easter term. And I came back after the Easter holidays and my voice had broken. So I must have been 13, 14, very early 14. My voice had broken and I had quite a deep voice all of a sudden. So I couldn't play the daughter and they swapped us round and I was playing Kent, King Lear's best friend. And they said to the big boys, who all had beards as well, all the older boys, all the sixth formers who were playing King Lear and the Duke of Albany and the Duke of Gloucester and Edgar and Edmund and all the rest of it, they said, make sure you shave before you come in for your beard fitting. And I thought, well, I can't shave. I've never shaved in my life. Why would I do that? So they did the beard for me. And what that meant was that every little strand of bum fluff that I'd ever grown in my life was torn out of my face when the time came for taking the beard off. I have never been in such pain in my life. Could you imagine what that pain was like? So that you're having every little hair, every little soft hair on your chinny chin is being pulled, being extracted out of the skin. And that was, I don't know why that just came back to me, but it wasn't very nice.
Well, I've always had bad follicles. So
bad follicles.
I can't actually grow hair.
Can you not?
Face, but I'm 31 and it's crap. I look like David Brent if I try.
Well, my dad, my late father, who had very dark hair, he grew a moustache once and it came out ginger. I don't know why we always found that so funny as kids, but it might not even be true. It might be a family myth.
Myth, yeah.
Right, you're on.
Yeah.
Why and when did humans start shaving their facial hair? I mean, it's a brilliant question. Did everyone just have beards in Tudor times? I genuinely don't know. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Peter's in Guildford. Peter, question or answer?
Answer, please.
Carry on.
Okay, it was really your question you had about the luminescence. And what the lady said was partially correct, but she then went off at a tangent about hi-vis jackets.
Yes, which wasn't even part. That wasn't part of the answer. Even no one asked about high-vis jackets.
Well, but she mentioned it, and it implied that it was with the same principle, but it's not. It's very different.
Right.
It's actually it's a pure physics problem. You coat a surface with small glass beads, such that the light comes in, is totally internally reflected and comes back in the direction that it's illuminated with.
Yes.
So if you see a high-vis jacket in a car, a pedestrian walking alongside won't see it as being illuminated. So it was really just a different principle, but
it's a clarification. It's a clarification, not a steward's inquiry. What are your qualifications?
PhD in astrophysics.
What was your PhD title?
Thematic observations of solar flares.
Oh, yes, of course. Fantastic. Have a round of applause from me. What's the difference? What's the difference between a thematic observation and another type of observation?
Well, it was easy to do thematic ones. I had more of them.
What does thematic mean?
It just means on a theme.
Oh, okay. Oh, so the thesis had a theme.
Yeah.
Which you then applied to your observations.
I used I used a whole load of observations to work out the theme. So it was really trying to get the most coverage from a whole set of data.
I think I follow some of that. Thank you very much, Peter. 2p actually missed you as mad, right? And also, I think someone has just been in touch to say the shaving question is actually in the board game. Well, I make no apologies for that. No one can remember everything. And I forget quite a lot these days. Thank you, Peter. Tamara is in Bexley Heath. Tamara, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on.
Okay, it's not so much the chicken and egg question, but we stayed in a hotel once on a farm, and
a hotel on a farm.
Yes.
Okay. Was it glamping or was it a hotel?
No, it was a nice country house hotel with a
nice
farmyard at the side.
Oh, I see.
I remember the lady saying to us that you're welcome to go and pick your eggs freshly laid from the hen.
Oh, how delightful!
That morning.
Yes.
So my question is, when you pick up a freshly laid egg, how do you know whether it's an egg for eating or whether there's a baby chick growing inside?
Well, I mean, it's got a lot to do with cocks. Hasn't it?
You said that.
No, well, it has, though, because, I mean, was there a cockerel around the place? I mean, is it likely that the eggs would have been fertilised?
So what you're saying is the hen will always lay eggs,
yeah,
but it takes a cock to fertilise it.
You took the words straight out of my mouth. Tomorrow, it does indeed take a cock to fertilise it. But I think the answer to your question is actually light. I think they hold eggs up in front of bright lights when they're packing them to make sure that everything is. If there is a chance that it has been fertilised, you can see because the yolk, the shell is not. It's a bit opaque. It admits light, so you can hold it up and you can see the silhouette. That's how you can spot double yolkers as well. Because in the supermarket now you can buy a box of double yolkers.
Yeah.
So they do. They hold it up to a nice bright light and then they can see what's going on inside.
Oh, I just hope that they do a good job and I don't crack it and it starts drooping.
No, that's never going to happen, I don't think. Because also the hotel wouldn't be doing that. They won't have. They probably don't have a cockerel near the hens. I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah.
Otherwise they'd be running the risk that you describe. Qualifications, I had chickens, would you believe?
You had chickens?
I had chickens.
Oh, lucky you.
Thank you very much. Round of applause for me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. 12:42 is the time. Kevin is in Aberdeen. Kevin, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Carry on, Kevin. I bet this is the oil. Aberdeen. Are you an oil man yourself?
Correct.
There you go. Aberdeen it is. On you go.
First and foremost, the idea that the oil exists in lakes under the ground isn't correct. It actually exists in what we call matrices or formations.
Yes.
So,
like a waffle.
No, they're more like you would call them rock.
Yeah.
So underneath the Brentfield, there are 5 formations: Broom, Rannoch, Ettrick, Ness, and Tarbert. And it's the combination of the oil that comes from all 5 of those.
Right.
That gives us the Brent crude. Now, the actual formations themselves, they vary. So in some situations, if I was to give you a core from one of them, it would look like a cork made of granite.
Right.
Whereas others are made of very soft formations, a bit like wet sand.
Okay.
All right. So when you remove the oil, in some situations, obviously the pressure decreases inside the formation, but because the formation is so hard, it doesn't really make a difference. Whereas over in places like, say, Northern Holland, where they have gas wells, the removal of the gas from the formations reduces the pressure, and it can cause it to crush and compress, which is why you get a lot of earthquakes in the north of Holland.
Is it? Because of the drilling?
No, well, they've drilled and then they've extracted the gas, which is at high pressure.
Oh, and then years later they can crumble under the ground, and that causes earthquakes.
Correct. So they started drilling in the 1960s, and by the 2010...
So it was a misapprehension of both myself and Alan to think that there's like some enormous empty cavern that used to be full of oil.
Correct.
There's nothing like that at all.
Surprised. When I saw one of the first core samples, it looked like a piece of granite.
That's absolutely... well, it makes perfect sense. That's why we've never seen pictures of the thing that you're talking about, isn't it? The thing that me and Alan thought that we probably should have seen some pictures of. So just finally, on the Brentfield then, when the oil has come out, when the oil has been extracted, the rocks from which it has been extracted stay exactly... Does the water get in at any point?
Well, no, because these can be a mile underneath the bottom.
Because it's below the seabed, so how would water get in?
Yeah, water can get in. There is water, current water, that's down inside some formations, and it can flow through. But we go out of our way to try and avoid that because it's difficult to get the oil out after it's been flooded with water. So no, there isn't water that's going in. But as I said, the 5 formations in the Brent field, the matrices are not all the same.
Got it.
And if they are going to collapse or they're going to sink in any way, you wouldn't notice it because it's like, 100 miles offshore.
No, of course you wouldn't. No, there you go. Problem solved. Qualifications?
I work in the oil industry for the last 25 years.
Seismic. That's a good word to use in conversations like this.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Round of applause for Kevin. It's 12:45.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
It is 12:48 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where quite a few people have empathised with that story of pulling your hair out by the roots, particularly women. And apparently there's a Jamie Dornan story that he told on the Graham Norton show as well that's similar, but at the sort of other end, so to speak. That would be a merkin, wouldn't it? Is that a merkin? Anyway, on we go. Questions that still need answers. Why aren't there any great white sharks in British waters? Why does the I get capitalised in English? Why do some people have innies and other people have outies on the old belly button front? On the oil well. When did humans start shaving? And we've done the eggs question. 0345 6060 973. If you're quick and you can answer any of those, there's a round of applause, and possibly even if your qualifications are extraordinary, there may even be a Ray Liotta. And remember, the best contributor of the week gets a Mystery Hour board game, either the old one, which is quite big, or the new one, which is quite small. I don't know which. It's like a lucky dip. Who knows? Roll the dice, see what happens. Andy's in Brighton. Andy, question or answer?
Hello, James. I have another question for you.
Yeah.
It's about the colour of noise.
Right.
We know that there's white noise.
Yeah.
And we know that there's new things called brown noise and green noise and pink noise,
What's
which I
pink
think
noise?
are there to... Well, I don't know what pink noise is for.
What's
I've seen
brown
adverts
noise?
for brown noise.
What's brown
well,
noise?
It's supposed to help you get to sleep, I think.
Oh.
So my question is, well, I know I'm not allowed to, but I kind of want to know what's the difference, and is there a black noise? So I'm thinking it's a spectrum. If white noise is at one end, black probably at the other, what does that mean? But is it to do with frequencies? What's the difference?
I've no idea. I mean, I'm not entirely sure what you're talking about. I've only ever heard of white noise.
Oh, yeah, no, they exist.
Are the noises?
I haven't made it up.
No, I know. Well, obviously, it'd be very strange if you had. Wouldn't it? Very odd way to spend your Thursday afternoon. So we definitely know we've definitely got white.
Yep.
And brown.
Yep.
And we think
I've seen pink.
But
and
when
green.
you say you've seen pink and green noise, what do you mean?
I've seen adverts for an app that helps you to fall asleep better or relax.
Have
better
you looked for such an app in the past? Online?
No, I'm scrolling through YouTube and the occasional advert comes up because I don't pay for premium, and I've seen that advert there.
But it must be your algorithm.
Well, it probably is my algorithm, but no, I haven't.
You've never downloaded. You've never sought help sleeping.
No, I sleep pretty well, actually.
I sleep astonishingly. I just bought a silk mask.
Oh, really?
I ordered one for Christmas. It's quite big, and I have never slept so well in my life as I am at the moment. It's extraordinary. I recommend them very, very highly. Okay, so we know that say those words again, Keith, in my head. White, brown, green and pink.
That's what I know of.
Yeah, same here.
Yes.
Okay, so what's going on?
What's going on?
03456060973. Thank you, Andy. Alison is in Haywards Heath. Alison, question or answer?
Answer, please, James.
Carry on.
So it's the question around the great white sharks. So a lot of people might think that great white sharks are not seen around British waters due to temperature. Actually, they are able to regulate their body temperature to wherever is cooler or warmer than the surrounding water. So they're endothermic. So it's not because of that.
Oh.
Actually, British waters are... they display near perfect habitat and suitability for great white sharks.
Is there? There's enough food for them?
There's plenty of that. It's not that. It can come down to migration. So some people say that the migration is not actually worth the energy that it would take to come to our shores. Other people believe that they are in fact
not even
here,
for benefits in a council house.
Especially not for that. Others believe that they are in fact here but remaining. Apart from the occasional speculative sighting, problems with that is that if someone sees something big with a big fin, that they may well think that it's a great white. Actually, basking sharks are in our waters, and they can be confused for that. The thing with it that if a great white shark were to visit British waters, most likely it would be a shark that has come from the Mediterranean, but because they swim at such depths. They may well be here, but would not be confirmed due to the prolonged time at depth. So the answer really is that the truth is that nobody really knows.
Don't know. Don't need to know. Nobody knows.
Yep.
Qualifications?
Exactly. I'm a shark geek. Since I was very, very young, I've always watched shark documentaries.
Really?
I have done a cage dive.
What was it like?
It was quite amazing. So I went to South Africa, did it in Handby. It was freezing cold. Had a few sharks around us. It's quite epic. They're amazing.
So
need to be protected.
Yeah, you'd recommend Aaron follows through on his dream then?
100%. Definitely,
amazing. And it's just an entirely amateurish enthusiasm because you really know your stuff. You're just an absolute shark anorak.
Started watching discovery documentaries at a young age, and they've always fascinated me, and they are absolutely awesome. So if anyone gets a chance to do a dive, definitely do.
Round of applause for Alison. What a beautiful answer.
Thank you.
No, you covered
Can
it all.
I have a Ray Liotta?
No, of course you can't. Very ridiculous.
Why not?
Jack Cousteau would get a Ray Liotta, or like one of the world's leading shark experts. You've just watched telly, Alison.
No, but I went all the way to South Africa.
Well, how many people have been in shark cages? You get it on your own. I don't care whether you were on your own or on a coach trip.
On my own, particularly to do it.
Yeah, well, you can't have a Ray Liotta because the question had nothing to do with diving with sharks. The question was about why there aren't any sharks. If you said, I have just completed the first PhD, first of all, you'd be the third PhD student on the show today, so you wouldn't even be special. And then you said, I've just completed the first ever PhD into why there are no great white sharks in British waters, and you may be interested in my findings, then you might qualify for a Ray Liotta. But just because you've been on a fancy holiday and watched a bit of telly, that doesn't get you a Ray Liotta in a million years, madam.
But they didn't call you, did they, James?
No,
I did.
No, and if they had, they'd get one. Yeah, well, lots of people rang me. They don't all get a Ray Liotta. Honestly, be grateful. Be grateful for the... Did I give you a round of... Did she have a round of applause? Yeah, well, that's your lot. Honestly, some people. Thank you, Alison. You may yet win a board game. Who knows? Gavin's in Jersey. Gavin, question or answer?
Good afternoon, James. It's an answer about the belly button in your outie. Yeah, so it's to do with how the umbilical cord is clamped at the point of cutting. So if it's further away from the body, it tends to be an outie or any sort of closer. It also has an element to do with how the skin heals.
Right.
There's no exact science to do with it realistically, but there is a belief that if the cord is further away, there's obviously more skin that's still there.
Fair enough. Qualifications?
I'm a new dad, and I cut my son's umbilical cord 16 days ago.
16 days ago?
Oh. Yeah, so we're still in the lack of sleep sort of phase.
So that's lovely though. And you just looked it up because you were curious.
Yeah, effectively. I mean, obviously changing nappies like 10 times a day, the umbilical cord being there with like the clamp.
Has it dropped off yet? When does it drop off?
It dropped off a couple of days ago, but yeah, it was really wigging us out. So I had a bit of a read up.
It is a bit weird. Are you going to keep it?
Yeah. No, straight in the bin. Weird. No.
Well, some people do. Some people keep the placenta, mate. Some people eat it.
They asked, and we're like, no, we'll keep the living one. We'll keep the living thing.
Yeah, well, lovely stuff. Round of applause for Gavin. Isn't that nice?
Cheers.
Lovely stuff. 12:50. Crack on quick. Dave's in Redditch. Dave, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Carry on, Dave.
Congratulations, Gavin. Okay, I'm ringing about white noise, pink noise, etc.
Yes.
White noise is a combination of all the audible frequencies that we can hear, so from 20 hertz to 20,000 cycles a second. Pink noise is a weighted range of frequencies, so it turns up the ones that our ears are less sensitive to and turns down the ones that our ears are more sensitive to, so it's weighted. And brown noise is shifted more towards the base end of the frequency spectrum. There is no such thing as black noise, as far as I know.
So, and these are all so things that help you sleep, or
well, they can, that's a side issue. They might help you sleep, or they might keep.
But
you awake.
These are just colours of noise. So this is sound engineer territory, then, really.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Qualifications?
Producer and sound engineer for 30 years.
What's your favourite? What have you worked on that you're proudest of?
I once did a session with the Baron Knights, but I'm not proud of that. It's just the thing.
Give me a round of applause. That's such a snorted. I wasn't expecting that one at all. I haven't got time for Mark in Barrow in Furness because Sheila says so. I can answer it myself. It used to be lowercase, like in Germany, but on printing it just wasn't. It didn't stand out enough because it looked like a single word. If it had been a three-letter word, it would all be lowercase. So that's the answer to the I question. I think I'm going to give the board game to the chicken lady. I mean, no particular reason. There's lots of lovely calls. I would have, Tamara. There's always Tamara. It's only a day away. I would have given it to the shark lady, but she was so greedy with the Ray Liotta that I'm not giving her a board game either. That's it for today. If you missed any of the show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player, the official LBC app, where you can also pause and rewind live radio. Download it now for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. I could so do voiceovers, couldn't I? I should look into that. There must be a few quid in it, don't you
There's
think?
no end to your talent.
Well, coming up at 4 on LBC, it's Todd Sorber. This is how you do the terms and conditions, isn't it? At the end of an
do you
advert.
want me to get you a sparkly curtain like they have on Strictly?
That would be nice, actually.
Okay.
It's time for Sheila Fogarty. 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 It's time